right. Well, this podcast is brought to you by Pie River Network, Intrinsic Marketing, Hodgepodge, and Nux 3-in-1 refresher spray. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I must have caught one of those weather change flu. You know what? It's not even really a flu. I'm just coughing and feel like the hand of death has touched my ever-loving body. Not necessarily my soul and everything, because if you follow me on Facebook, you know that I told everybody that my heart and soul was left in New York and it's in good hands, and I will be back there in due time to collect my merchandise. So the hands of death have just touched my body, and I feel almost like garbage, but the show must go on. I am also Negro. Mac will be calling in at some point here soon because his brother's wedding is coming up here soon. As a matter of fact, I think it's tomorrow. So he had to make the trip to go out and celebrate with his brother. However, he will be on the show here in a little bit. So we'll hold off. I think we got to talk. He did tell me that they did not talk football last week. They was waiting on me, apparently. That wasn't going to happen. I think by the time the show started, I was either on the subway going to God knows what. Let me see if we're talking Saturday. Where did I go Saturday? As a matter of fact, I think I went to go see, oh my God, for the life of me, I can't tell you where I was at Saturday. I'm trying to think, where was I at Saturday? I think I went karaoke Saturday, but I don't remember where I was at beforehand. I was on the subway going somewhere to go get food somewhere, probably. I think that's what I was doing. As a matter of fact, I think I went to go get a sandwich at some joint, just like some random joint by Central Park in New York. I ain't gonna lie, the sandwiches in New York are definitely something to talk about. They are definitely something to talk about. I'm telling you. The only thing New York does that royally pisses me off is that their hot dog game sucks. I went and bought a hot dog from like this little street vendor, and it was arguably the worst $2 I have ever spent in my entire life. These are facts, ladies and gentlemen, pure facts. Like, as a matter of fact, one of the funny things that I did in New York, Keith, what's going on, bro? What was I gonna say? I forgot what I was going to say. That's how you know that I'm out of it right now. It's okay. Keith says, how about that offensive line? Yeah, dude. Hey, you know what? I think it was a combination of a couple things. I think, A, the Bucs offensive line looked like straight up doo-doo. I think, B, the defense is a lot better than people give it credit. I think that's one thing that we forget. We forget about how good the Cleveland defense is going to be this year. But I mean, at the end of the day, because think about it, the offensive line this week, this is really the worst the O-line has really looked. It looked pretty good against Pittsburgh. It looked at least somewhat decent in the game before against whoever we played. But this game against Cleveland, it looked like hell. But again, I think Cleveland's defense is much better than people give it credit. So that's kind of what I think happened, to be perfectly honest with you. That's what I think happened. So Lewis is saying Cleveland versus Chicago in the Super Bowl. I don't know about the Bears. We're going to talk about the NFC North. I do think that the Bears are the best team out of the division, but I do think that they're the best team out of the division by default. Because I don't know how much I trust Detroit. I think Minnesota's overrated, and I just don't think Green Bay is going to be good this year, but we'll talk about that later. But and as far as Cleveland is concerned, I think Cleveland could be that team that's 1 year away from actually doing something. Because there's a lot of people that think that the Cleveland Browns are just a team of hype. You know what I'm saying? It's a team of hype. I know I got them winning the division this year because I think the other three teams kind of took steps back. But you never know when it comes to Pittsburgh. With Pittsburgh, though. I think Pittsburgh is a very interesting team as well. I was kind of checking out the score. The Dodgers are not. I know they're up 2-1 on the Yankees right now. But let me tell you what, though, man. I'm not a fan of these jerseys that Major League Baseball's got them wearing. I believe Minnesota will beat out Chicago. I don't believe that because I think Kirk Cousins is the most overrated quarterback in all of football. I've never been a fan of Kirk Cousins when he came out in Washington. I always will hold a grudge on Kirk Cousins the way the RG3 thing was held up. But I think Kirk Cousins is overrated. You know, in football, there's a lot of quarterbacks that are bound to the system. Like a lot of people hate on Tom Brady because they believe he's only as great because of Bill Belichick. You know, what would happen if Bill Belichick wasn't the head coach of the New England Patriots? We will never know. You can't play with the what ifs. You have to play with the what happens. And what the what happened is Tom Brady's put up amazing numbers with Bill Belichick. But in a Case Keenum / Kirk Cousins type of affair, Case Keenum was the perfect fit for that system in Minnesota, and they got all bent out of shape because Minnesota got waxed against the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC title game. Well, here's a news flash. The news flash is that the Minnesota Vikings, or that the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl that year. So, I mean, it's nothing against Minnesota. I mean, Case Keenum had a bad game. But I think they should have paid and kept Case Keenum and not went so quick to go out and get Kirk Cousins. Because like I said, I think Kirk Cousins is very overrated. I think of the defenses in the North, the one that's going to suck the worst is Green Bay. I think Detroit made big moves. Chicago's defense is really good. Minnesota's defense is really good. But, you know, it's all about what's going to happen with the offenses. That's what I believe personally. I'm trying to see if it's still 2-1. Looks like it is. It's still 2-1. I know the speaking of baseball, I know the Chicago Cubs need to get their act together, don't they? Let me pull up my what I want to pull up. My MLB, because when I was at the Mets game, I went to Citi Field on Tuesday. And when I went to Citi Field, I did notice that the Cubs were only 2 games above the Mets for that second wild card spot. You take a look at these standings real quick. Wild card, National League. Yeah, the Mets are only game and a half behind. I mean, they're playing Atlanta, so that's kind of advantage Chicago because Atlanta's a much better team than the Mets. But if they don't get their acts together, I don't know, man. The Cubs going to be on the outside looking in. And that's crazy. I mean, I think them and St. Louis right now are tied with the same record. Actually, St. Louis has 2 less losses. They're going to have to get their acts together. They're going to have to figure it out. The Cubs are on the verge. The Cubs, Cardinals, and Mets between the National League Central and the wild card. Somebody's going to be on the outside looking in. That's fact. I can't wait to talk this football, though. I know Keith is a big-time Bucs fan. So am I. We were talking a little bit about the game yesterday. The one thing that I can take out of the Bucs preseason is the fact that they got a kicker. The fact that I can't take out of the preseason is the fact that Bruce Arians is really serious about carrying 2 kickers. That's crazy. Matt Gay is the better kicker. And it's nothing against Cairo Santos. It's just Santos doesn't have a leg powerful enough. And I don't want the Buccaneers to be that team where do we go for a 50-yard field goal or do we punt and put them inside so you leave points on the board because you got a kicker that can't kick over 50 yards. And you got one in Matt Gay. That's the one thing that I could take. Of all the things that I could take out of the Bucs preseason, knowing how bad the Buccaneers kicking situation has been over the years, I can legit tell you with a straight face that I believe that the Bucs have finally found their kicking woes. And it's the same team that traded up to get Roberto Aguayo, and everyone made fun of the Bucs for doing that. But the only reason why the Buccaneers get made fun of for doing that is because it didn't work out. Because no one made fun of the Raiders when they drafted Sebastian Janikowski in the first round. And we all saw how good Sebastian Janikowski was for so many years with the Raiders because it worked out. When you make picks that don't work out, you look like an idiot. When you make picks that do work out, you look like a genius. In this case, the Bucs trading up to get Aguayo didn't look so smart because it just didn't work. That's all that is. Steve Mack said he's ready, so whenever he wants to call in, we can get him on.
Okay, yeah, I'll take care of it.
All right, cool. So think about that for a second. Just looks like tomfoolery to me as far as I'm concerned. But, man, I'm going to tell you what. Going to Yankee Stadium and going to Citi Field was a treat in itself. Obviously, I'm more biased towards Yankee Stadium for obvious reasons. Citi Field's a nice place. That's a nice park. I like Citi Field. I thought Citi Field was pretty nice. I think the food and drinks up there in both parks are absolutely ridiculous. But, dude, we're talking $13 for a beer. And I know it's one of the tall boys, but still, man, $13. Going to Citi Field, there's a little mom and pop liquor store, and I paid $4 for 2 Tecates. The only thing I regretted doing that is I didn't buy 3, because I most definitely smashed those beers on the way to the park. Sweet mamacita, $13 for a beer. And then, like, Yankee Stadium food is pretty expensive, too. Man, Yankee Stadium food was, like, damn near, I think I paid for some chicken tenders and garlic fries, and it was like $14. I'm thinking, man. Hey, I did have some good pizza there, too, though, by the way. What's up, Rob? Thanks, bro. Appreciate it, man. And I'm not going to lie to you. I am at the point right now where this stay that I'm doing, me coming back to me going back out there, it is only temporary, bro. This is temporary. While I was out in New York, I made a couple of moves. I made a few inquiries. And my stay from now coming back here to Chicago to going back to New York will only be temporary. So I feel like I am on borrowed time. I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there for everybody. I am on borrowed time out here in the Chicagoland area. That's why I am not as sad as coming back per se, but it is what it is. What's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, Nick, what's good, man?
Man, you know I can't call it, bro. I got the weather-changing sickness right now, but I ain't no.
I can hear it in your voice.
You know what I'm saying? But I ain't no bitch, so I still came out here, and I was.
You don't call off.
Hell no, unless I'm dead, dude. I don't call off. And here's the funny thing too. Supposedly, I was called a bully and mean at work earlier today for whatever reason.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, that's what I said, and I was like, damn. Did New York really change me to be an asshole or something like that? Like, what are we doing?
You came back with that New York attitude.
Hell right. Thanks,
hey,
J-Cat. I appreciate that. With everyone. You said what?
Make friends with everyone.
Hey, I know that's right. What's up, man? What's going on? Hey, I tried to check out some of the show last week, but I was explaining to everybody. I forget where I was going to on Saturday. Like, I tried to tune in, but I was on the subway. So clearly my wasn't working. My phone wasn't working that well. But I saw you and Miro in for a little bit, And I was like, okay, you're in good hands. And then I went off to,
Hell yeah.
I still don't remember where I was at on Saturday.
Yeah, dude. It was a blur because Miro. Listen, I'm gonna say this about Miro. He was playing coy when he walked in. He's like, yeah, I don't know much about sports and yada yada yada, and I'm a White Sox fan, and I get with this guy, and this guy is. We're going deep into single A ball with the White Sox, and he held his own when it came to sports too. So I think he was being modest when it came to his sports knowledge, because we definitely we talked a little White Sox pretty much, and then a couple of notes on the Bulls and the Bears, and then we just jumped into UFC 241, man, because that was that was essentially the crux of everything. Was UFC 241 was going to happen, and but Miro held it down for us, man. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, that's probably what I was doing. I was watching UFC 241. I forgot about that. I did. I went to a bar to go do karaoke, and then one of my friends was like, "Oh, I'm watching UFC 241." I was like, "Damn, I forgot." So I caught the back end of the Diaz versus Pettis fight. I think I caught rounds 3, 4, and 5. I mean, 2 and 3, and then I watched DC taking on Miocic for the heavyweight championship of the world. And just to kind of briefly go in those two, because I really can't talk about anything else because I didn't see it. Diaz pretty much dominated Pettis. And then on top of that, hold on a second. Oh, my friend Melissa, she's saying, I inherited that New York kick-ass attitude from me. I am not denying that. I ain't gonna lie, dude.
Melissa, you're a bad influence on my guy.
Hey, Melissa had me on my toes the entire trip. like I likes to like subtly talk shit every once in a while, and she always had a comeback, and I'm like, damn. So like I like to talk smack to those that I know don't have a comeback for it, so then I could just like smooth my way on to the next line. But she always had a comeback, so then I had to dig deep into my bag that I wasn't ready to dig into quite yet. And I was like, and then she left me speechless a couple times. So I can't argue.
You got your kryptonite, man.
Man, I swear on my life, bro. I know. Next time I go, I have my game much better next time I go out. Facts.
Nice.
Yeah, so Pettis gets dominated by Diaz, but then Diaz calls out Masvidal.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I can rocks with Masvidal versus Diaz. I hope it lasts longer than Masvidal versus Askren did. But I can dig. But, what's his name? Nate Diaz ain't no dumbass. He's not going to go head low and get caught with knees. But if that fight gets made out, I'm all for that fight.
Yeah, I think right now the only thing that's up in the air on that fight is the finances. I think both fighters have said, yep, that fight's happening, but the UFC just can't shortchange us. I think they're targeting December right now. That would be amazing if they could get that booked before the end of the year. I think they were talking about maybe, making it in Vegas. But yeah, man, what a comeback by Nate. And, even with his diehard fans like me, I was thinking, man, 3 years away from the cage. I know he keeps in really good shape. I know he does a lot of jiu-jitsu. I know he's on top of his shit overall. But I just thought 3 years, man, Anthony Pettis has looked so good over the last 3 or 4 fights. He's looked like a savage against some of his opponents, including like the Tony Ferguson fight, when even though he didn't win that fight, that Ferguson fight was nuts. So yeah, I mean that was the huge thing for me is Nate going to be able to shake off the ring rust, and there's no such thing as ring rust apparently. I've been corrected many times since I said that. A couple people who know more than me in this game basically said ring rust does not exist.
Right.
It's one of those things where if you know how to fight, you know how to fight. And, as long as you're keeping yourself in the conditioning and the mental conditioning and the physical conditioning, you can do it. So, yeah, Nate, man, he looked amazing. He looked like vintage Nate. And he to me, that Masvidal call-out was smart because I think Masvidal, he realized he's not going to get a shot at the belt next. And I think Masvidal basically looked at that Nate call-out as the blessing that it was. And I think it's going to happen, Nick. But what I will say is if it doesn't happen, we can thank Dana White and not Jorge or Nate.
Right. No, I'm with you on that. I also wanted to make mention as well that, as you notice, I'm in long sleeves because the temperature has dropped tremendously. I don't know how hot it was out here in Chicago the last 10 days, but Christ almighty, from Friday until probably yesterday when I came home, it was hot as balls in New York, dude. I'm talking clear 88 to 95 in New York. It's ridiculous. And like I'd step out of the house like, okay, I'll give you a small story. So on Monday, we all went bowling. Melissa's like, well, wear a shirt that won't be so hot in. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I had like this real nice, it's almost like a pink golf shirt. But I was like, it'll allow me to breathe so I can go ahead and bowl in it. Man, I was glistening through that shirt within 10 minutes. It was so hot. Like I didn't understand the heat. Yeah, dude, I really needed Nux by then. Definitely could have went for Nux. I was thinking about it too. I was like, man, where's that Zeus can of spray of Nux? Yeah, dude, sitting up here not being used. Should have snuck it out the studio when I had the chance. But nonetheless, though, let's get to the UFC heavyweight championship that was it was DC versus Miocic. And I had said something. I said something when the fight was over with because I was very disappointed in what's his name, in Daniel Cormier, because in the first round, Stipe is good and all, but I've come to realize over the last few fights that Stipe's wrestling is not on the same level as DC. So when DC comes out and he picks up and he slams Miocic and he's wrestling him, I was thinking to myself, well, this fight finna be over because I have a great feeling that DC's just gonna out wrestle and he's gonna wear out Miocic and then he's gonna catch him like he did in the last fight. And for whatever reason, he went completely against the grain and tried standing up against Miocic. And then by the third or fourth round, this man was gassed. And he was gassed.
Sad to see because that's not his game either. He usually will be smart about it. He just wasn't smart about it.
Wasn't smart at all. And that's why, like one of my friends came out, oh, Nick, I don't think DC was such a dumbass. I do. Because when you're a natural wrestler, that's like, okay, that's like if Brock Lesnar would come back to the UFC. If Brock Lesnar came back to the UFC, let's say he went up against Francis Ngannou, and he tried to go toe-to-toe against Francis, it'd be the stupidest game plan ever because Brock's stand-up against Francis' stand-up is not even we're not even in the same playing field. Francis Ngannou is a 88 times better striker than Brock Lesnar. Brock would need to come in with the wrestling game plan, the ground and pound game plan, the shoot game plan. That's how he would beat Francis. In DC's case, when you know that you're a world-class wrestler and you're a step and above better than Stipe, don't go with the game plan in the first minute or the first round and a half and then just completely ignore the game plan to a point to where you get your ass knocked out in the fourth round because you're gassed because you tried to sneak the same game plan that made you the UFC heavyweight champion in the first place. Stipe is not an idiot. He knows that, look, okay, I know I got caught, so if I can stand up with him one more time, I'm gonna look for this and maybe look for that. And he has in DC tried a couple times when he was going for those those catch me hooks, and it didn't work out. And the guy that got hit with the catch me hook was DC, and now DC's looking up at the sky wondering what happened.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with DC, man. He's got one of the best coaches in all of MMA, and he's got that guy Young in the corner to do the opposite of what he decided to do. I think the worst thing that could have happened for DC was that he won that first round the way that he did.
Right.
Because he outstruck Stipe so tremendously, and I think everyone was so shocked that, oh my God, Stipe is getting dominated again. And then what happened was Stipe came out ready for a 5-round fight. And I think DC came out ready to win another first-round knockout.
Yep.
And that was a ginormous mistake because Stipe came out in that second round, and I don't think he won the round per se. I think he had a really nice rally. And what really caught my eye, Nick, was that DC went back to his corner and asked his corner if he lost that round. That is the first time I've ever heard him do that.
Right.
As a guy who makes his living outside of the octagon by calling fights, he should understand that, first of all. And second of all, I think he's more keen to it. So I think he saw the surge that Stipe made, and, he didn't make the adjustment his coaches asked him to. His coaches asked him after that second round, stop fucking around and stop, trying to hit him with 100% every single time you hit him. And Stipe's a boxer, man. People forget, Stipe is not a guy who walked into MMA as this well-rounded. This guy is a tremendous boxer who's held his own in the grappling and wrestling department, so to speak, so far. But when Stipe saw that opening, and then in the third round, what happened was DC wasn't blocking those body shots for some reason.
Yeah. And what's the name? Melissa just brought that up. She said it wasn't the chin that got him. She said it was the body shots they killed him.
The body shots. Yeah, it was crazy because he had this opportunity coming out of the second round to make a serious adjustment and go out and win in the championship round. Because, okay, I know people looked at DC and said, man, he was gassed. He was. But part of the reason why he was so gassed at the point where the fight ended was because he was going so hard in the third round for no reason. He really wasn't doing what his coaches asked. And he came out and said it after the fight. He fucked up, and he said, hey, this isn't, the game plan that we had, and I really feel bad because I messed up and I didn't do this and that. And at the end of the day, man, I can't put my finger on, because I know you didn't hear much of the podcast last week, Nick, but part of my preview was, is DC gonna come back? I thought he's 40 years old now. He said himself previously that after 40 he's done. He doesn't really want to fight in his 40s. And he turned 40 earlier this year, and I think a lot of people thought this was one of those fights he thought he was going to win and, go right off into the sunset, Nick. And it didn't happen. And now he's stuck in this mode where, he might not want to retire. It's hard to end your career on such a sour note. And I think the fact of the matter is, I don't necessarily think he deserves an immediate title shot, but I think he should be back in the running for the heavyweight. I hope him and Stipe get another fight.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, dude, it was a very interesting I'm pretty sure the pay-per-view was decent. Like I said, though, I was out singing karaoke and almost forgot, but I
can't blame you for that, man. You were out enjoying New York, so I figured. And I do want to talk about this because this was the third fight I talked about last week, was Paulo Costa versus Yoel Romero.
Yeah.
I had Romero winning that fight, I think, in a spur of the moment decision. But what a fight! Candidate for fight of the year. Yoel Romero is a savage. He's 44 years old or something like that. he looks like. I mean, I said this about Paulo Costa. He looks like somebody like that sculpted a Greek god or something like that. But Yoel, his like traps and his abs look like they were built in a lab or something like that. So it was crazy. It was a crazy fight. Yoel took so many shots that I don't know how he was conscious most of that fight. It went to the decision, and I think Costa, he really bum rushed. And I think Yoel, man, there's people thinking Yoel won that fight. I don't necessarily think that. He got in some really nice technical shots, but Costa was hitting him with some significant strikes. And, I think Yoel took the L on that one. He is one of the best fighters. Nick, he's a case. There's guys in sports. They are really, really good at what they do, but they will never be champions.
Right.
And Yoel Romero is just one of those guys. He is just a freak of nature. Probably going to keep fighting. I don't think he has any inkling of ending it because of how good he looks. But, he's going to fight and be a really good fighter for the rest of his career until he decides to hang him up. He's just never going to be the champion.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right.
But yeah, that's all on that one.
Yes, sir. All right, man. Well, we got 2 divisions that we need to cover, and we're going to dive head first into them. Because my boy J-Cat, I'm not sure if he's watching or not, is a diehard 49ers fan. So we'll get to the West, but we're going to start off with the NFC North because I feel as if, a lot of people call me a hater per se, especially when it comes to Chicago. Because I'm always having this age-old, like, sometimes I love to troll Bears fans in particular. There's certain things that I say that I know is going to trigger them, and then there's certain things that I say in which I believe, and they swear up and down, like we'll never agree on the greatest of all time running backs because everyone will swear up and down. Well, I shouldn't say everyone. Most people will tell you, okay, I shouldn't say that's too strong. There's a good of amount of people that tell you that it's Barry Sanders. I will never tell you it's Barry Sanders because I don't respect quitters. Then there's people that'll tell you that it's Walter Payton because Walter ran for so many yards and fewer attempts, and he didn't have the same offensive line as Emmitt Smith. But then, if that's the
Walter only
case,
had 4 guys in front of him. Walter was, he didn't have to help.
Right. Bears. Walter Payton didn't have some guy named Larry Allen and Bears.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Excuse me, I can't even do impressions without coughing.
I got you.
Then, in the same breath, if I say, well, what about Jim Brown? Because Jim Brown only ran for like 8 years with Cleveland. Excuse me. There we go. Only ran with 8 years with Cleveland, and this man ran for almost over 12,000 yards. Oh, but, he didn't have the rushing record like Walter did. Okay.
Yeah.
So then here I come, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to give it to Emmitt because he's the all-time leading rusher and a 3-time Super Bowl champ. Oh, but he had such a great offensive line. How dare you? You're just a hater. Okay, whatever. So.
Yeah, I saw that, Nick, and I do want to sort of defend you for a second because I saw that thread, and that's the reason why I did the whole, what Peyton had 5 high schoolers blocking for him. There's this sense in the city that because Walter Payton was one of the greatest of all time, which nobody is doubting, is that he's the undisputed best. The same thing happens with other teams, other fans of other teams. And I know Barry Sanders, if this conversation, Nick, is so hard to have. True. If you want to have this conversation, we have to break this down. Are we talking about the best physical running back of all time? Like who was the best at his position? Are we talking about performance? Because these are the types of distinctions you have to make in this conversation. Because when you say Emmitt Smith, people look at you sideways, but it's hard to argue with the numbers. It's very hard to argue with the results. So, again, what conversation do you want to have? And that's why I'm a fan of those conversations. Don't get me wrong. I like having who's your favorite or who's this or who's your number one. Those are great conversations, but there's no absolutism in that, right? You saying Emmitt Smith is the greatest of all time is in no way, it doesn't affect what I think. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, it shouldn't have to be Emmitt isn't the greatest because my guy's the greatest. No, this conversation is you put up your argument, I'm going to put up my argument. All right, your argument is that Walter is the best physical running back of all time, meaning he was the best player to play that position. You know what? You might be right about that.
Right.
Athletically, yeah, I think that's hard to argue with. Peyton was way better an athlete than Emmitt. Or,
right.
People would argue Barry was better than Walter.
Right.
So again, it's a conversation of nuance. It's hard to have in that type of conversation. But no, I agree. You can't really go against the grain without being called a hater nowadays.
I know that's right. So, we'll talk about the Bears here in a second. I want to start off with the Detroit Lions. Because Detroit, to me, is a very interesting squad in a sense of I feel as if defensively the Lions got better. The questions are going to be, what are they going to do offensively? So looking at the team, obviously, you're starting quarterback for what I think like the 8th or 9th year now is Matthew Stafford. Starting out at running back is Kerryon Johnson. C.J. Anderson's backing him up. Wide receivers wise, you got Marvin Jones, Danny Amendola's on the team now. Kenny Galladay. They drafted the kid T.J. Hawkinson. And then looking at their offensive line, Taylor Decker, Frank Ragnow, Graham Glasgow, Kenny Wiggins, and Rick Wagner from left to right. And then the Lions are going to be running the 3-4. So from left end, nose tackle, right defensive end is Trey Flowers, Damian Snacks Harrison, and then Romeo Akawa. And then outside linebacker, you got Devin Kennard, Gerard Davis, who just got hurt the other day. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, got carted off the field with a knee injury. Christian Jones, and then Jalen Reeves-Maybin. And then their secondary is Darius Slay and Quadre Diggs with Tracy Walker and Rashawn Melvin. Then looking at this, no, go ahead. What are your thoughts on that? On the roster?
Yeah,
so
no,
far?
Nick. Honestly, man, I was mulling it over because, I quite like what they did over the offseason. I can't lie. Being a Bears fan is not going to really go into my thought process when looking at this team. I really like what they did with this defense, Nick. I think they went out and got guys that they felt that they needed. They already went out at the trade deadline last year when their season was dead, Nick, and they still went out and made a trade for Snack Harrison. That just kind of proves what type of player he is and how much they like him because he's that good. The numbers don't lie on that guy. Damon Harrison's very good. Obviously, everyone knows about Ashawn Robinson, but they went out and picked up Trey Flowers, a guy from New England that knows their coach, whatever his name, Patricia or whatever.
Matt Patricia, yeah.
And so they did a good thing defensively. Offensively, I like Kerryon Johnson, and I don't really like anything else about their offense, Nick. They went out and made a really crazy, I think one of the least talked about things that happened during the draft was them selecting T.J. Hawkinson. I want to say top 10.
Yeah.
And I want to even say maybe even top 7. 8th overall. So that was a really huge sign to me that this team was worried about this offense because Matt Stafford, how much leash does this guy have now, Nick?
I'm
guy,
asking the same question.
You mentioned it earlier. It seems like this guy's been on the team for 15, 20 years. And I know it hasn't, but this guy comes out of Georgia, and they think this guy's a wonder kid, right? And from what I've seen, pretty much all we've seen from him is that he's a darn good fantasy quarterback, and that's basically it. He's going to throw the ball a ton. For some reason, they've got Kerryon Johnson. They've got some other guys that they can plug in there, including C.J. Anderson, who they picked up. But they go out and get Hawkinson, and the offensive line is getting a little bit older and a little bit worse every year. They lost Golden Tate. They obviously lost Calvin. So that was a real shot in the leg for them a couple of years ago when that happened.
Right.
And I think they weren't prepared for life after Calvin at the wide receiver position. And we'll see how Kenny Golladay does. We'll see how Marvin Jones does. But I just simply don't believe in this offense enough, and specifically in Matt Stafford, to think this team is going to win anything.
Excuse me. All right. Yes. Hold on. So then, man, looking at their schedule, so they start off at Arizona. Man, I'm dying over here. All right, here we go. They start off at Arizona.
Get the man some water, Steve.
No, I got a whole gallon in here. I took a huge.
I'm trying to get the levels down when he coughs. It's hard.
My fault.
I'm watching him really closely, but
Yeah, my fault.
everybody's
No, you're good. You're good, bro.
got to work with it.
So they're at Arizona,
Mm.
and then home against the Chargers, at Philly, and then home against Kansas City before the bye week. Then in week 6, they have Monday night against Green Bay, and then hold on, sweet mamacita. All right, so then they got.
I can finish this one out if you want, Nick. Let me finish this one out.
Take a cough break. Take a cough break.
Let me finish
You're
this one
down.
out. You can get it out of you. We've gotten them to basically week 5 is their bye week. The week after that, they're at Green Bay on Monday night. Following week at home, it's part of what looks like. It's actually 2 in a row at home against the Vikings and the Giants after that. Then they go 2 on the road, 1 against Oakland and another against Chicago in Soldier Field. Then week 11, they are at home versus Dallas. Week 12 is at Washington. And then week 13 at home versus the Bears and another division rival, the Minnesota Vikings, week 14 in Minnesota. Then they'll face your Bucks in week 15, Nick.
Automatic Ale.
That's not going to be good. And then at Denver, and at home against Green Bay to wrap up the season. So lots of division games late. What are you thinking when you see that schedule, Nick?
Well, I see an automatic L week 15.
Yeah.
But man, I don't know. And they're playing the AFC West too. I mean, I think the Lions are no more than a 7-9 team. I think it all depends on how good what's his name's going to be. Matthew Stafford. I think Stafford is the end all. You know what? I should kind of take that back. I think it all really relies on the run game. The one thing that Detroit hasn't had consistently over the last few years has been a consistent run game. We're talking about the same team who at one point almost went 2 years without having a 100-yard rusher, let alone having a consistent run game. So I think Kerryon Johnson and C.J. Anderson are going to be huge to take some of the pressure off of Matt Stafford, that he's not throwing 40, 50 times a game. But this schedule is pretty tough. You know, you're taking on the Chargers. You're taking on the Chargers, Eagles, and your first four games is Arizona, Chargers, Philly, and Chiefs. That could easily be 1 and 3.
Exactly what I was about to say.
Then when you come back, you're at Green Bay on Monday night, and maybe Green Bay is a little bit more improved, so that could be an L. And then you're at home against Minnesota. You might be able to get the win. So right there, you're already off the bat 2 and 5. But then you get the Giants at home, like that could be a W. You get at Oakland, that could be a loss because I think Oakland's a little bit better than they were last year. The Bears are obviously a better team. I think Dallas is a better team than Detroit. So we're already looking at maybe 3 and 6, maybe even 2 and 7. Then you get at Washington, you could win that game. So we'll call that 4 and 7. And then the Bears, and then Minnesota again. You're not beating Tampa. So that's what I'm saying. I'm thinking 7 and 9, 6 and 10 just off the bat. But again, it all depends on how good Matthew Stafford's going to be. If Matthew Stafford is going to be the guy that some people were considering being the next MVP, then maybe, just maybe, this will happen. But at the same time, I think Detroit is an average at best team, and I think they're going to have an average at best record. So 6 and 10, I don't think they'll be no better than 7 and 9.
Yeah, Nick, I think we're pretty aligned on that. I have a hard time seeing them. So first and foremost, they play Green Bay tough, and they always play Chicago tough, no matter what those two teams collectively look like.
Right.
So they have a chance, but I still think they're the worst team in this division.
Easily.
I think that that first 5 games, Nick, is going to be really tough. Arizona, listen, they've got a rookie quarterback and a rookie head coach, but it wouldn't be the first time that we've seen that have success. So I'm not going to count them in as guys that we should, put W's on the board for Arizona quite yet. But at Arizona is a tough start, and then you've got at home against the Chargers, who are a fringe team themselves, Nick. They really are going to need wins out the gate because they're probably not going to have Melvin Gordon. And they're going to need to get off to a good start to quell that. At Philly, and then at home against Kansas City, and then back at Lambeau on Monday night. That's a really tough first 5-game stretch.
Yeah,
I don't see them winning more than 2 in that one. In any particular scenario, which is just when you start the season 2 and 3, as you know, it's not going to look good. I think 6 and 10 is probably really good. I'll give them 7 and 9 because of the fact that they're going to get Arizona before Arizona has a chance to really gel. I think they could be an upset candidate against the Chargers at home, and then they're going to face the Giants, they're going to face Oakland, they're going to face Washington, and then towards the end of the season, we don't know what Denver and even that Green Bay game, what it's going to look like. I would say 7 and 9 is probably a pipe dream for them, and I think 6 and 10 is probably more where they're at.
And let me say this too. Another reason why you can't necessarily count out Arizona is because the last time the Jets faced off against a rookie quarterback was last year when they let Sam Darnold just throw all over against them in the first Monday night game. So you almost can't necessarily say, okay, this is going to be a shoe-in win, when at home last year, you made Sam Darnold look like Rookie of the Year. And I'm not saying Sam Darnold is a crappy quarterback by any chance, but that was a prime example for the Detroit to come out with a win. But instead, I think Darnold had like 4 touchdowns in that game. So
yeah,
you're right. It's not necessarily shoe-in for them to win. So let's go and talk about Green Bay. Because
I'm glad you said that, because I think they're the second to last team in this division.
Yeah, they're most definitely, in my opinion, the second best. And my main issue now, my best friend, one of my most awesome friends, Melissa, who has watched the show, contributed to the show, is one of those 2 favorite team type of fans.
Oh no!
Unfortunately, bro, she loves the New England Patriots, and she happens to really like the Green Bay Packers.
Interesting.
I find it interesting myself. Now, with that being said, we were talking about football when I was out in New York, and she said that she's very interested to see what Matt LaFleur does with Green Bay. I will echo that because my issue and my main issue with Green Bay, and this is going to shock some people, is with number 12. Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion, if he has... See, here's the problem. People have a bad habit of always looking at stats, but never look at the results of games. Okay? Aaron Rodgers, I hate to bring this up, but they did the same nonsense with Colin Kaepernick. There was people that were saying, well, Colin Kaepernick can't play football anymore, blah, 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 this, that, and everything else. My thing wait a minute. Didn't this man throw for 16 touchdowns to 4 interceptions? That's a 4-to-1 ratio. Do we not look at the games and realize like he did all he can do, yet maybe he was surrounded by a terrible team? Okay.
Yeah.
In Green Bay, it's the same way. Because people, when you talk about life after Aaron Rodgers, there's going to be people that say, oh, you can't get rid of Aaron Rodgers. How dare you draft a quarterback? How dare you do that? He's still one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the game, and blah, 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 and this and everything else. And all he did was throw for 28 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. Okay, but if you was looking at the games, it wasn't an efficient 28-8. It wasn't an efficient over, I think, threw for over 4,000 yards. This team was mediocre at best and got Matt McCarthy fired. Now, in Green Bay's case, Green Bay, I thought last year, made the biggest flub you can ever make when they didn't trade for Khalil Mack. When you're running a 3-4 defense, you don't have Julius Peppers anymore. Clay Matthews is getting old. You don't have B.J. Raji. Your defense is getting old. All the reports last year that Green Bay was on the inside track of getting Khalil Mack. And all of a sudden you woke up the next morning and every Bears fan was going head over heels on their Facebook when the Bears pulled the trigger and traded 2 first-round draft picks, a second-round draft pick, and a whole lot of other nonsense for Khalil Mack. The first thing I said was the biggest idiots in all this was Green Bay. How do you not draft a guy that's 3-4 and you on the inside track? And you just let your division rivals get the guy that you were supposed to get. That doesn't make sense to me. So now you're coming into this year and you got rid of Randall Cobb. He's not on the team anymore. Aaron Jones is probably going to be your starting running back in front of Jamal Williams. But your wide receiving core is Devontae Adams, Geronimo Allison, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Jimmy Graham, who's still your starting tight end. That was supposed to be the move of the century. Packers acquired Jimmy Graham from Seattle. Get him out of that system. You get him to where you get a more pro-style system. That hasn't worked out. Then you look at their line, David Bacardi, Lane Taylor, Corey Lindsey, Billy Turner, and Brian Bulaga is their offensive line. So it's an okay offensive line, but hopefully it's not one that will get Aaron Rodgers killed. And then here's another one I don't like. I don't like their defense. You know, Dean Lowry, Kenny Clark, Mike Daniels. And then
Mike Daniels got cut. He's
that's right. That's right. I forgot about that.
Now.
So now throw in Tyler Lancaster. Then you get Preston Smith, Blake Martinez, Oren Burks, Zadarius Smith are your linebackers. And then Darnell Savage, Jair Alexander, Kevin King, and Adrian Amos. That's another thing I wanted to get on Green Bay. They did that message last year in the draft. Marcus Davenport, sitting right there at 15, was supposed to be maybe the best 3-4 pass rusher on the board. He's sitting there on the board, and you traded down, excuse me, with New Orleans, and then New Orleans got Davenport. And then you went back to back on defensive backs. Didn't make sense.
Yeah, man. It's funny you mentioned Mike Daniels, Nick, because that was one of the reasons why they decided they didn't want to trade for Khalil Mack last year, is because they felt there were going to be too many cap casualties as a result of signing him. And they felt like Mike Daniels was going to be one of those guys. They felt like they were going to have to part with Clay Matthews a year earlier. Now neither of those guys are on your team anymore. You don't have Khalil Mack to show for it, and you went out overspent on overrated players in the free agency. I mean, quite frankly, Zadarius Smith, the money that they gave that guy, he was a backup in Baltimore, Nick.
Yep.
He didn't play in Baltimore. They let him go without an issue. They felt like they didn't need him. And they, the Green Bay made a long-term commitment to it quickly. And then they came running for Adrian Amos, and the Bears were like, bro, have him. He's one of the main reasons the Bears, lost some games during the regular season and then lost that game against the Eagles. He missed a tackle, an easy tackle that would have basically, taken back one of the long TDs that the Eagles had. So I thought they did a terrible job this offseason in free agency. I didn't like the signing. We talked about this before. I don't really like LaFleur. He's like, when you think of Nick, quarterback coaches that go on to be head coaches, you hear the coach and then you hear the team. Doug Peterson, he was with he was with Kansas City, right? Who was with Doug Peterson with before the Eagles?
Oh, he was in Kansas City with
Kansas City.
What's his name? Andy Reid. Yep.
With Andy Reid, and everybody looks and goes, "Wow, that Kansas City team was really good." And then same thing with the guy in LA for the Rams. His name's escaping me. The young guy.
McVay. Sean McVay.
Yeah, McVay. Sean McVay. He comes from Washington and a couple of other teams that had some really good quarterback play that year. And LaFleur comes from the Titans, who last year, Nick, weren't that good at the quarterback position.
No.
First of all, they were cycling through two guys, both of which were not very efficient and not very good. So, all I really want Packers fans to do, because obviously, Packers fans, I'm a Bears fan. I hate you. You know this by now. It's fine. But I would like you to read the piece that came out earlier this offseason, very early in this offseason, about Aaron Rodgers and his relationship with Mike McCarthy and everything that happened. Nick, when you read this, you start to wonder why people don't think of Aaron Rodgers as maybe more of a locker room cancer than he gets, quote unquote, credit for.
Right.
This is a guy who changes plays in the huddle without telling his coach. Is openly on multiple occasions. I can think of 3 or 4 different occasions where he screamed at the sideline, basically flicking them off. There's one where he got caught on the hot mic screaming "bad call" after getting sacked. This is a dude who shows up his head coach like on a daily basis and gets, because like he goes to bus games and chugs the beer. People are like, oh, he's a nice guy, but nobody ever thinks of this guy as a locker room issue, and that's what this. When you read all the facts, Nick, it's not hard to come to terms with the fact that this guy isn't very good in the locker room, and he's really hard to coach. If this doesn't work for LaFleur, it's one of their heads, and it's likely going to be LaFleur. I'm going to say one thing before we move on, Nick. I think if that whole thing doesn't work out in San Francisco with Jimmy Garoppolo, don't be surprised if they call the Packers next year and say, what are you thinking about giving us Rodgers? Because, they have a nice team this year. They should take a step up as long as Jimmy is what is advertised. But they have picks to spare, and they've got a lot of assets that they can give to the Packers. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers have another 6-10, 7-9 type season, and they start to go back to the drawing board next offseason and say, maybe we have to move on from number 12.
And I am 100% in agreement with you on that. and they couldn't have picked the right year to want to do this with the fact that there's supposed to be so much quarterback talent in this pool.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's supposed to be a lot of good talent that's supposed to be in this pool, and this could end up being Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre all over again. You know, Brett Favre still had a few good years left in him when they drafted Aaron Rodgers, and then when it was time to pass the torch, they went ahead and passed the torch. And I wouldn't be shocked because, no offense to Aaron Rodgers, but bro, you have not sniffed the Super Bowl since you won it last. Yeah. Now, I know some of them losses aren't necessarily the fault of Aaron Rodgers. If you look at that game against Arizona, if anyone could tackle old-ass Larry Fitzgerald, maybe they have a better chance of winning that football game. But it seems like every time you go out, the Green Bay Packers have declined. Aaron Rodgers has become more of a headache, and this team isn't getting any better. And now that, and I'm with you, either they call about maybe a Garoppolo, depending on how bad or good they are this year, or if they just go ahead and draft the guy, groom the guy like they did Aaron Rodgers, and then once Aaron Rodgers' contract is up, saying, you know what, Aaron, thank you for your services, but we're gonna move on. I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I got a Super Bowl out of you, thank you, but you know what, dude? If this doesn't work out with LaFleur, this is going to reflect badly on Rodgers because, you know, listen, again, I would encourage everyone who's doubting me or, you know, thinking, hey, this guy's the Bears hater, whatever, and he's just a Bears fan. I would encourage you to read the article that is pretty lengthy and details a pretty deep decline in the relationship of Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers. And, you know, basically Mike McCarthy is the guy who ended up looking like the bad guy there, when in reality he wasn't really given a chance to coach correctly, and that's to do on Rodgers.
Yep. So, and then looking at Green Bay's schedule, I'm going to make it through the schedule, I promise. Even though the Dodgers just beat the Yankees. Hold on, I'm not gonna make it through the schedule. So I hate it with these coughs. They piss me off. All right.
I got you, man. I got you.
All right.
I got you.
They start off at Chicago on Thursday night, and then 3 straight home games against Minnesota, Denver, and Philadelphia. That Philly game is actually a Thursday night game. Then they're at Dallas. Then a Monday night game versus Detroit. Home game against Oakland. Back-to-back away games against Kansas City and the Chargers. And then a home against Carolina before the bye week. Then you get at San Francisco, at the Giants. Back-to-back home games against Washington and the Bears. And then back-to-back away games to finish the season. Monday night against Minnesota. And then a Sunday game against Detroit. So these fools then gave the Green Bay Packers 4 primetime games. Come on, man, give me a break.
Yeah.
I mean, Green Bay to me is an 8-8, 7-19. They're just an average team to me. There's nothing special about this team. This is not the Aaron Rodgers, Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb. This is not that squad. You know, and we're talking about the Detroit Lions having their issues running the ball. I feel like Green Bay has never solved their issues with running the ball. Like Aaron Jones is okay, Jamal Williams is okay, but they're not barn burners. They're not going to tear down the house. You know, they had what was the guy? Ty Montgomery, who was really a wide receiver turned running back because both of their running backs had gotten hurt. So I don't feel like they and don't get me wrong, I think Aaron Jones is a good talent. I think Jamal Williams is a good talent, but they just have not been able to piece it together. So I'm with you where not only do I believe this team is an average 8-8 team, but I think this is a team that will start looking at life after Aaron Rodgers at some point.
Yeah, Nick. I'm gonna go. Listen, I'm gonna talk to them in the same light that I talked about Detroit. The first 5 games is crucial for them. That opener, it's no secret that opener is huge. It's it's going to be that game, the opening game. Every single football fan is going to be watching all throughout the world, and it's a big game at Soldier Field. I can't see them winning that game, Nick. Even in my biased or unbiased minds, I can't see them winning that game. The next 4 games are still tough, even though they're at home for 3 in a row. Minnesota's going to be a tough team. We'll talk about them coming up. Denver is an improved team with a really, really good defense that, if they could run the ball effectively, might be a surprise this year. And then you got the Eagles and Dallas back-to-back. So, man, that first 5 games is going to be rough for them, but they're also lucky that they have a soft schedule like the rest of this division. They are going to see the Giants. They're going to see, Washington. They're going to see, Detroit twice. They play Minnesota, historically tough. They're going to see Oakland. And, again, Denver, we don't know what type of team they're going to be. So I see them in the 6-10, 7-9 vein as well, man. I think it's time, for them to start to understand what the exact root of the issue is when it comes to this team over the last few years, and it's this over-reliance on Aaron Rodgers. And they came in this year and decided to spend $1 billion on the defense and draft high asset values on the defense. I mean, they went out and spent at safety, and they have good safety, and then they spent a first-round pick on a safety as well. I thought it was crazy to me that they selected that guy Savage. I liked him out of Maryland. He's a really good prospect, going to be a really good safety, I think, soon. But it was a reach in my opinion. They need help on the offensive side, and specifically offensive line. They're very good on paper, but all of their guys right now are getting up there in age. And
Yep.
Bakhtiari is there. He always has problems when it comes to injuries. He's notorious for being the guy who starts the season with 2 or 3 games, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you look up and he's out for 5, 6, 7 games. So, their offensive line is getting up there in age, and they didn't do much to add to it this year. So it's hard for me to say that they're going to make much of an improvement. Honestly, I mean, they gambled with the defense, and I think this is a 7-9 team at best right now.
Yeah, dude. And on top of that, they drafted Rashawn Gary, who a lot of people felt did not tap into his real potential in Michigan, and he got hurt, if I'm not mistaken, last year.
He just got hurt, yeah, and apparently it doesn't look good because he got carted off. So you never want to hope for a guy to get injured, but that's just bad news to start the season for both the Lions and the Packers on the injury front.
Exactly. The next team I do want to talk about are the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota, to me, is a team where I feel a lot of people hype up, like ever since Minnesota won the
miracle
game against the Saints. They went out, they got smoked against Philly. Yeah. And then they kind of had more or less a down year last year. And I mentioned, I said it before you came on to the show, because one of the guys who's a Bucs fan, Keith, is he swears up and down that Minnesota will have a better season than the Bears. But I don't think I feel that way. And I'll go on record of saying this, I still believe that Kirk Cousins is the most overrated quarterback in the game. For a guy that got paid a whole lot of money, I just, for the life of me, don't see it. I'll never understand it. I don't know, like Minnesota could not have been that desperate to get a quarterback when like I said before, The knock on Tom Brady, a lot of people try to say, is how much he's a system quarterback because everyone wants to play well. If he wasn't with Belichick, he would only be this. But I'm not playing the if game. I'm playing the what I see on paper game. And what I've seen on paper and what I've seen on TV is a guy that's broken a lot of records and won 5 or 6 Super Bowls, whatever it is. When I look at Case Keenum, yes, is Case Keenum the sexiest name at quarterback? No. But was Case Keenum under center for a team that went 13-3 all the way to the NFC title game? Yes. So why and what exactly in Kirk Cousins' past did you think warranted him an $84 million contract that you guys paid him? Absolutely nothing. That's why the Minnesota Vikings, to me, will be average at best. But here's what will help them out. What will help them out is Dalvin Cook's supposed to be coming back super healthy this year. So that's a good sign. And you got some really good wide receivers. Stephon Diggs really been moving up the charts. Adam Thielen came out of nowhere, really moving up the charts. Kyle Rudolph, nice little tight end, reliable tight end, a guy that can catch the ball when you need him to. Can't knock that. Looking at their offensive line, it's okay. Riley Rife, excuse me. Pat Eflin, Garrett Bradbury, Josh Klein, Brian O'Neill. Excuse me. And then I look at the defense of Minnesota. And that's another one. They run the 4-3. So you got Everson Griffin, who, we know that he's a monster. And then you got Danielle Hunter, Shamar Stephen, and Linval Joseph. Then your linebackers, Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, and Ben Gideon. And then you got Trey Wayans and Xavier Rhodes as your defensive backs, Harrison Smith and Anthony Harris as your safety. So, defensively, I think Minnesota can be good. Offensively, Minnesota be okay. I just don't trust Kirk Cousins. That's the biggest beef that I have with this team is that I just don't trust Kirk Cousins. I think he's severely overrated. And, you got guys like Terrell Davis and some other guys that think that Minnesota could be better than the Bears. And I'm telling you right now, as long as Cousins throw the ball, the Bears will always be better than Minnesota in this case.
Yeah, man, that's hard to argue with, especially considering last year pretty much everyone on that team had a really good season except Kirk Cousins.
Exactly.
He's the one who sort of, he didn't really have a great season. I mean, I know the 2 times he played the Bears, he was not very good and turned the ball over a lot. And the guy that was not good in the fourth quarter for them, which they need. And I thought they struck out and missed really badly in the offseason, Nick. They didn't really do much. Like they instead of swallowing the pill of losing Anthony Barr, they decided to clear cap space and go out and steal him back from the Jets.
Right.
And I thought that was a really interesting move because I think it showed their window, Nick. I think they see the window on this defense closing.
Yeah.
And it's hard to argue with that logic when you're looking at the way that their front seven looks, not only age-wise, but, production-wise. Danielle Hunter is a very, very good player. He has overachieved throughout his career, and last year sort of looked human again. And then Everson Griffin is a guy who was in a loony bin for 3 weeks out of last season.
Yeah,
and people were unsure if he would they were unsure if he would ever play again, and he was doing weird shit and waking up in the middle of the night and grabbing his gun and saying somebody was at the door or something. So I have a hard time looking at the team and thinking they did their job this offseason. They didn't. I mean, Nick, listen, you watched Dalvin Cook in Florida State.
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy, this isn't a new thing, his injury issue.
That's true.
This goes back to high school and college.
Yep.
So to me, the best thing they could have done, Nick, is say, man, we took an L on Anthony Barr. but shit, we have some space now to go out and grab some depth. And they didn't do that, Nick. They apparently feel good about Amir Abdullah being their backup running back right now. After Dalvin Cook, that's pretty much what you've got at the running back position. So with that in mind, it's really hard to look at this team in the same vein. They're stacked at wide receiver. There's no doubt about that. But we're both talking about how their quarterback is really, really not reliable.
Right.
So this defense, with the window closing, my God, I mean, Mike Zimmer's job is on the line this year, Nick. I know Zimmer's done some pretty nice things, and he won the Miracle Game, and everybody, and I know the ownership likes him in Minnesota. His head's got to be on the chopping block after this year, and the best thing right now that they have, for them is a top-heavy defense that may or may not have the same amount of depth that we're talking about that they had last year that allowed them. I mean, Xavier Rhodes was hurt a lot last year. I know he's one of the best cornerbacks in the league, but again, it's a depth issue with them. Do they have the type of talent evaluation that they need? I don't think so. We'll take a look at their schedule and see what it looks like, but I will be as unbiased as possible, Nick, when it comes to the Bears, but I don't see a shadow of there's not even one iota in me that thinks the Vikings are going to compete for the division this year, because they have to show us that they can be consistent. And though the Bears, have questions of their own, I don't think the Vikings deserve to be in the same conversation right now.
I'm with you on that. So looking at the Vikings schedule, they open up against Atlanta, at Green Bay, home against Oakland, at the Bears, or back-to-back away games with the Bears and Giants, then home against Philly, at Detroit, a Thursday night game against the Deadskins, back-to-back away games against Kansas City and Dallas, and then they're at home at Denver before they get the bye week 12. Then they come back with a Monday nighter against Seattle, home against Detroit, at the Chargers, and then back-to-back home games to finish the season. One Monday night against Green Bay, and then a Sunday game against the Bears. So I'm thinking to myself, 9-7. I'm thinking 9. I'm thinking 9-7. Like I'm not gonna say that what you call it is like total garbage because of my disdain against Kirk Cousins. I'm just saying I don't think they're gonna be as good because of my disdain for Kirk Cousins. Like they'll be decent at best, but like 9-7, 10-6. But I don't think that they're better than the Chicago Bears are. Like if I was gonna say which defense do I trust the most, and even though that I've had questions about how Chuck Pagano is going to run the defense different from Vic Fangio, I still think that the Bears defense is better than Minnesota's. And then if I was just kind of offhand say if someone put a gun to my head and said, who do you trust more, Trubisky or Kirk Cousins? 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna go ahead and just choose Mitchell Trubisky. So I think Minnesota's a good team. I don't think they're a better team than God bless. Chicago, than the Bears. I don't think they're better than the Bears. I think they're better than other teams, but 9-7 to me is good enough.
Yeah, I sort of look at them in the same light that you looked at Green Bay, Nick. I see them as a middling sort of 500 type team this year. They actually have the better sort of first 5 game schedule than the other teams that we've already discussed, because if they can find a way to eke out a win at Green Bay, I'm not a really huge fan of the Falcons this year. I know the offense is going to be good, and the defense had a lot of injuries last year for the Falcons, but that's still up in the that's 50-50 for me in the first game. And then you've got at Green Bay. If you can win that at Green Bay, you've got a home game against Oakland and a prove-it game against the Bears in Soldier Field, which can be a big win for this team. And then you're looking at the Giants the following week, so you have a chance to start 3-2, 4-1. And that is what you need in a football season. Is you need a good start. But the one thing you can't have is you can't bury yourself in the start. And I think the other two teams we talked about, have a chance to bury themselves. I don't think Minnesota does. I see them as 8-8 only because right now, we know what football is. Football is a war of attrition. It's not, X's and O's are really fun to talk about right now, Nick. But when it's all said and done, X's and O's sort of get thrown out the window, and it turns into, who do you have left?
Right.
Do you have guys that you can play now? Because right now, my whole team is injured, and I need to find somebody to step in now. And I get it. No team is prepared for that, right? But I don't think we've talked about a team yet, Nick, that I think is less prepared for that than the Vikings.
Yep.
When we talk about Dalvin Cook and we talk about Kirk Cousins, they're 2 injuries away from basically being a 6-win team.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's a very tough call. I see 8-8 as a possibility, but I will be unbiased in this way, Nick. If they have that really nice start and they win against the Bears in Soldier Field, my God, that's a great start. You get to play. If you can start 3-1 and lose one of your first 4 games, you're at the Giants, the following week with a chance to go 4-1. And those seasons, when you start 4-1, it takes an epic collapse to move backwards in that. So, I'm going to give this team 8 wins, and I'm going to say they have the capability of getting 10 wins. But right now, I can't trust their depth at all.
Right. I'm with you on that. Last but not least, and let's go ahead and finish out the North real quick. The Chicago Bears.
Yes, sir.
The Bears were one double doink away from advancing to take on the would they have played the Rams if they would have won?
I think it would have been the Saints, if I'm not mistaken. It would have been I think it would have been the winner of the other 2 games, or the other game rather.
Okay.
I think it had something to do with the seeding, but we won against the Rams, Nick. So we would have, it's something to do with the seeding, but it would have been basically NFC Championship against the Rams essentially.
Because the Bears played in the first week. They were the 3 seed coming in.
Yeah,
they were the 3 seed.
They missed it. Yeah, they missed that by a little bit.
So then that means that as the 3 seed, I think it would have been the Saints. Because the Saints the Saints actually beat Philly, and then the Rams beat who did they beat to get into?
It wasn't Seattle, was it?
Was it Seattle?
I'm blanking on it.
Yeah, I'm blanking on it too. But
it's all right. But yeah, no.
Nonetheless,
they're 1 missed field goal from basically the NFC Championship.
Right, from at least trying to go to the NFC Championship, and the Bears. I was like, okay, this team is on the right path. They got the right coaching staff, but then I kept saying to myself that if Vic Fangio is coaching the number 1 defense in football, there's a great chance that somebody is going to ask for permission to talk to Vic Fangio, because there's no way he's just going to sit there and remain the defensive coordinator. And sure enough, here come the Denver Broncos. The Bears gave him permission. They set a deal. So the guy that I feel was the real heart and soul of this defense is now gone in Vic Fangio. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that I don't think Chuck Pagano can't do a good job, because for what it's worth, Chuck Pagano kind of laid the foundation that is the defense in Indianapolis right now. Okay, a lot of those guys that you see over there in Indianapolis, a lot of those guys were Chuck Pagano drafted guys, and how good that defense is. So I guess it's there. I just, for some reason, have to start seeing, I need to see Thursday night against Green Bay to see how really good this defense can be under Pagano. But I feel the Chicago Bears, not so much personnel-wise, but experience-wise, can now take the next step into being something great. We know about Trubisky at quarterback. Right now, Tariq Cohen is listed as the starting running back, but I wouldn't be shocked if David Montgomery at some point takes more of the physical yards away, because I've never seen Tariq Cohen being a 25-30 carry guy.
No, he's going to be a gadget player. Montgomery, probably even by week 1 will be splitting carries with Tariq. Yeah,
right. And because Tariq Cohen reminds me of like a faster James White of New England. You know how James White is kind of that favorite out of the backfield target.
15, yeah.
You feel what I'm saying? And that's what I think Tariq Cohen really gelled into last year, really helping out Mitchell Trubisky. But then you got Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel, and as your 2 starting wide receivers, Cordarrelle Patterson is on his team now. Looking at the tight ends, you got Trey Burton and Adam Shaheen, excuse me. And then the offensive line, anchored by Kyle Long at right guard. Also, you have Charles Leno Jr., James Daniels, Cody Whitehair, and Bobby Massey from left to right. And then we just talked about how good the Bears defense was last year. Akeem Hicks, Eddie Goldman, Jonathan Bullard. They run the 3-4. Leonard Floyd. Leonard Floyd is interesting to me too, because I feel this is the year that Leonard Floyd can step up. 1 year he was too thin and he wasn't big enough to get past the get past the offensive lineman. And then next year he kind of got better with it. But I never really looked at Leonard Floyd as a pass rusher. I looked at him as more as a like a Derek Brooks type, the coverage guy, I know where the running back's going to be, so let me get the tackles guy. Every once in a while, I come in with a blitz. He's not like the Khalil Mack. I've never seen Leonard Floyd, even when he played in Georgia, to be the Khalil Mack, Von Miller, T-Sizzle off the edge kind of guys. I never really saw him like that. So hopefully the Bears don't try to turn him into something that he's really not per se. But then you got Roquan Smith was a really good draft choice. Khalil Mack. And then you got Ha Clinton Dix, Eddie Jackson, Prince Amukamura, and Kyle Fuller. You're the Bears fans. Give me your thoughts. What are you looking forward to the Bears this year? What are your expectations from this team this year?
Yeah, so I want to start off with the whole Vic Fangio thing, Nick, because that's a good discussion that's happening amongst Bears fans right now, and we've had this discussion before. And I want to say this about Vic Fangio: he's a very good coach. Don't get me wrong. This is a guy who came from San Francisco and had some of the best defenses in the league in San Francisco back when Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman were doing their thing.
Right.
They had a really solid up front. And I want to say this about him, Nick. When Vic Fangio lost the personnel for his defenses weren't that good.
Right.
And you don't really have to look farther than the Bears before they got Khalil Mack. This defense was showing signs of really, really serious progress, but they were still not good, Nick. They, even like when John Fox was the coach and, he decided he wanted to run the ball 75 times a game and, just try and play defense. This defense wasn't like a game-winning defense, right? So we saw this team and everyone on this team take a step up last year when they asked Khalil Mack and they essentially, locked down some key players on this team. And listen, there's going to be a difference in these defenses, okay? They're both 3-4, but Fangio's defense is very different from Pagano's defense. Pagano's defense blitzes more. They do more dime personnel, meaning like 4 or more cornerbacks or defensive backs, which would essentially put it into a 6 defensive back set at times.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried about that, Nick. I can't lie to you. We don't have the depth to run that from day one. So we're going to have to figure out a way to, try not to get in those positions. I know that, part of Pagano's shtick, what he was so good at in Indianapolis is, creative alignments, movement before the snap. They do a good job of just, assignments and letting guys basically trick the guy in front of them. And more man-to-man coverage, which I'm a little bit concerned about too, because we played a lot of zone last year, and that's a lot of our success as the defense last year came in the zone. So, listen, Pagano admitted that he is going to change up his philosophy a little bit. He admitted you can't walk into the number one defense and basically say you're going to do what I want you to do. No, that's not how this works. You're going to have to fit into what we do, and we're not going to fit into what you do. And he had a good mentality about that, and that's why I'm not necessarily worried about that. I think the jury's still out on Fangio, Nick. He's going to have a very good defense in Denver this year.
Right.
That's stacked. So I wish him nothing but the best. They're not in our division, so I don't really care. For all I care, they can go perfect this season if they don't play us. But we'll have to see what it's like, for Fangio in his first year as a head coach, because, he's been in the conversation a lot, Nick, and he's been a guy who's like always the groomsman, never the groom, right? So that's really the question. I like what the Bears did this offseason. I have a couple of critiques. I think anybody who follows a team is going to have critiques of what they do. We have a lot of wide receivers right now, which leads me to believe we're going to throw the ball a lot. Part of the reason why they decided to move on from Jordan Howard is because they felt like, running back is a very easy switch in this offense rather. And Cohen, he plays such a gadget role for this team that it's not really necessarily one of those things that's going to kill you to lose a guy like Jordan Howard and replace him with David Montgomery, who's one of the best. People thought he was the best running back in this class, despite the whole Josh Jacobs hype. People still thought this guy was the best because of his career at Iowa State. So, I'm excited about this team, Nick. I can't lie to you. Expectations are high, man, and that's really the number one thing is this team is still riding the high of last year. Mm-hmm. And I get it. We were a really good team last year that was derailed by a terrible kicker, and basically could have been the number one team in the league if we had a competent kicker last year. So, it's hard to make an argument that this team needed to make too many changes in the offseason. I did think that losing Bryce Callahan is going to hurt, but they decided Buster Screen was just as good for less money. Jury's still out on that. I know that Adrian Amos, I was okay with them letting him walk, and I was surprised they decided to bring in Clinton Dix. But Clinton Dix played with Eddie Jackson at Alabama, and he has some connections to the coaching staff. So I'm excited about this defense again. I think regardless of what happens, you're looking at one of the deepest defenses in the league, and we're talking about a team that is basically 3 deep at every position and looks really good. Now, Nick, it's time to take it off the paper and put it on the field. And we're going to have to see. I like what you said because, yeah, we're going to have to see what happens. Part of it starts tonight. I think it already probably starts. Yeah. So part of it starts tonight in the 3rd preseason game and seeing how your offense is able to flow. We're going to have to see what this team does because, listen, man, a lot of people who make their money talking about sports have picked the Bears this season to maybe take a step down. And it's hard to argue with their logic. This is a team that's still relatively young. Despite their success last year, they don't have exactly a team that's back with veteran leadership.
Right.
So you have to really, as a Bears fan, right?
you want to go in and think this is a 13-win team. You know, they're ready to take the next step. Mitch Trubisky's ready to take the next step to be a tier, 1 or 2 quarterback. That's all fine and dandy on paper, but at the end of the day, man, they got to go out and show it and prove it. And Matt Nagy has a very, he has a tough job ahead of him here. He has to prove that this defense can not only, it doesn't have to carry this team, and that in year 2, after we all know, Nick, 1 year in the league, good for you. You did tremendous. Let's see how you do year 2 now, because the team has, the opposite team has tape now to watch on you. They don't have to worry about, you going out of your element, because they know what you do now. So let's see what type of adjustment Matt Nagy makes. I have confidence in them, and I've already seen their schedule, but let's talk about their schedule, because, I think the schedule is a very important part of, what this team might do this season.
All right, so looking at their schedule, they, as we said, open up Thursday at home against Green Bay. Then they're, go figure, at Denver week 2. Then they're Monday night week 3 against Washington. And then back-to-back home games against Minnesota and Oakland before the bye week in week 6. When they come back, they're in New Orleans to take on the Saints. I'm sorry, they're at home against New Orleans to take on the Saints. Then they're at home against the Chargers to take on they're at home to take on the Chargers. In Philly, home against the Lions, at the Rams, home against the Giants, at Detroit. That's the Thanksgiving game. And then they have and then they play again the following Thursday. That's at home against Dallas, at Green Bay, Sunday night against the Chiefs at home, and then they finish off in Minnesota. Just looking at that schedule, I mean, it seems kind of tough. I mean, New Orleans is I don't know if I'm ready to put them as the cream of the crop in the South quite yet. I think they're going to take a huge drop off this year. But I mean, I'm looking at some of these other teams. I think Denver's going to be better this year. Washington kiss my ass as far as I'm concerned. Dallas is going to be, I think it's going to be really good this year. Philly, not for what it's worth, but 2 backup Philly quarterbacks went down in the last 2 weeks of preseason, and it can't look good because Carson Wentz can't stay healthy to say a day in his life. So, I mean, that could be a decent one. Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes will be a decent game. But I think the Bears can easily go 11-5. I think they're 11-5. I think they win the division again. Do I have them necessarily in the Super Bowl? Probably not. But it wouldn't shock me if they made it there. If we're talking about not so much only the hype, but if we're also going to talk about where they can go from here, like where's the ceiling? Well, the ceiling at this point will not be the Super Bowl. So, you get Mitchell one more year under Nagy. You get Tariq Cohen's now going to be a good centerpiece. And now you got one full year, of continuity with the rest of the offense. Can they now step up and become the Super Bowl contenders that a lot of people think they can be? It's there, but we'll see when the season starts. But I think 11-5, 12-4, no worse than 11-5. I think it's good for the Bears.
Yeah, no, I'm hesitant to pick a win, an exact record right now. But the reason why I said I think the schedule is important and what you would think about this team is because, listen, Nick, I only count 5 really tough games for this team next season. I don't think the Packers anymore is listen, division games, I take them out of the fold because anything can happen, right? But I don't look at any of our division foes and think that's going to be a really tough game. It's just going to be, are we going to show up or are we not going to show up? And, that's my thought process with our division. But other than that, listen, New Orleans is a team that a lot of people are picking to take a step down here, Nick. You're not the only and first and only person about that. There's a lot of guys who think that Drew Brees right now is not looking that great in training camp and saying that he's, his arm is looking as bad as it's ever been. And listen, it's not like he's a guy who throws the ball deep a lot anyways, but, we'll see exactly how that goes. But, I think the Chargers are very beatable. I think Philadelphia is very beatable. The only real, teams I see that are a really big threat are Kansas City, the Rams, possibly the Cowboys by the time we play them, and then New Orleans. So I see that opening game against Green Bay as a good gauge. If you can start out 1-0, then you're in a really good position. And if you can't start out 1-0, you've got some teams that you can beat up on afterwards that might help you. So, if they get blown out in the first game, it's not a good sign. But if they, lose a close game, it would be heartbreaking, but it's not going to end their season. You'll have a chance to get redemption the following week at Denver, and then at Washington, who we both, that's a Monday night game. I think we're going to crush Washington. I think that's going to be one of those 46 to 7 type games, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so too.
At Washington, yeah. So yeah, Nick, I agree. 12 and listen, I love this. I love this team with a passion, and I have a hard time every single year picking a number of wins. I wouldn't be surprised, Nick, if this is sort of a grinded out type season. Just looking at our division and their schedule and then our schedule and the type of teams that are still sort of up in the air as far as who you're going to get. We don't know who Denver is quite yet. We don't know what Oakland's going to look like after this sort of transformation. We don't really know what the Chargers are going to look like. We don't really exactly know if, like I said, Dallas could be a dangerous team late in the season, or they could be a dud like we usually see. So, to me, man, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a season where you only win 10 or 11 games, but win the division and feel good about yourself going to the playoffs. But without a doubt, it's Super Bowl or bust for this team. They've said it. There's a lot of expectations on this team, specifically on this defense. And as I say that, I'm watching them give up a touchdown to the Colts. So, listen, we'll have to go with a win, and I think right now 11 wins is probably more realistic. But I think this team has an easy shot at 13-3 if they can be the same dominant team that they were last year on defense, and Mitchell takes a step up.
Agreed. I mentioned earlier today that I was in New York, and for the 9 days that I was out there, I was hotter than balls for 7 of them, and I definitely could have used this Nux. Nux is a 3-in-1 refresher spray when you're out around on a hot day and you're feeling sweaty and sticky and you don't have time to go take a shower. 3-in-1 Nux refresher spray is definitely the way to go. It's a refresher spray is made to replace all the other halfway solutions on the market. Armpits, clothing, sports pads, athletic equipment like boxing gloves, helmets, and anything that gets nasty during activity. 3-in-1 refresher spray has no aluminum ingredients and is tested to be safe and effective all over the body. And it comes scented, like this one right here, the Zeus scent, or unscented. If you want to find out more, go and visit mynux.com. That's mynux, KNUCKS.com.
And I have something to add to that, actually. I was just talking to Nick, the owner of Nux there. He has a community. It's hashtag no more sweaty balls.
You still there?
Yeah. And, so what we're doing is we're trying to get people to sign up for the pre-order form. If you go to the mynux.com website there, you'll see under the product there that there is a pre-order form that'll ask you a few questions. And if you answer that pre-order form and you kind of commit to it, then you will be the first in line for the underwear that they're releasing, the spray, and also you'll get a free T-shirt. So that's what I have to add.
Nice. All right. Well, we're an hour and a half, I think, in the show. I haven't died quite yet. And we're gonna go through the NFC West. And then next week we'll finish off with the South. And then by that time the NFL season will be here and ready to rock and roll. Yeah, I know, dude. Here to ready to rock and roll and whatnot. So let's go to the West. And I think it's pretty safe to say that the first team we're going to talk about is the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I'm looking at Arizona right now, and on paper, Arizona doesn't actually look as terrible as you might think. Like, because here's a team last year, went and got Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen, for what it's worth, was so bad. And the reason why I say for what it's worth was because the Arizona offensive line was absolutely atrocious. So,
Yeah.
so my thing is, they suck so bad, they not only got the number one pick, but then they bring in Cliff Kingsbury, who was the former head coach in Texas Tech, to come up and take the Arizona job. And he, right off the top of the bat, said, I love me some Kyler Murray. I want me some Kyler Murray. That's going to be my quarterback. And without missing a beat, they not only drafted Kyler Murray, but then they traded Josh Rosen to the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
So there's your starting quarterback. But then you kind of go down the line. David Johnson, if he can stay healthy, one of the better running backs in the game. You know, a few years ago, David Johnson was that mid-round, first-round pick in fantasy that worked out for anybody and anybody that got him. Okay, he was the dual threat. He ran for touchdowns and was able to catch touchdowns. Awesome. The year after, tears up his shoulder. What was it, like the first 2 weeks of the season? Gone for the rest of the year. Last year, they were just so bad that he was kind of coming back from injury, and just Arizona was just terrible as a whole. I think this year now, he's now second year coming from the shoulder injury. David Johnson should be a monster. He should be a guy, once again, he's probably going to be that guy who, again, mid to late round, first round draft pick in fantasy drafts, but could end up working out in the long run for most teams. Then you look at the wide receiver. They won 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end. So Larry Fitzgerald comes back for another year. Then you get Christian Kirk and Keyshawn Johnson. I mean, they're okay. They're definitely not the caliber. Excuse me. They're not the caliber of Larry Fitzgerald. Excuse me. But they're serviceable wide receivers. Then they got Max Williams at tight end. So you get Max Williams at tight end. Then looking at their offensive line, DJ Humphries, Justin Pugh, A.Q. Shipley, J.R. Sweezy, who's good if he can stay healthy, and Marcus Gilbert. But then I'm looking at the defense, and this defense really isn't that bad.
No.
From left to right, they're running 3-4. So from left end to right end, Terrell McClain, Corey Peters, and Rodney Gunter. But I think this is where I was very impressed. Chandler Jones, Jordan Hicks, Dennis Gardeck. You bring in T-Sizzle, Terrell Suggs, and then you look at your secondary. Yes, you lost the Honey Badger, but DJ Swearinger, when healthy and not being stupid, can be a really good safety. And then you got Tremaine Brock, Byron Murphy, and Buda Baker. And then the one name I didn't mention, which was Patrick Peterson, because he's suspended from the PEDs, if I'm not mistaken. So once he comes back, it kind of bolsters up that secondary. So, yeah, Arizona may be bad as far as the division because they're not going to be better than Seattle. They may not be better than San Francisco, and they're not going to be better than the Rams. But Arizona, on paper, is a very decent team.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And I think, Nick, we talked about this on another podcast. I think Steve Wilks didn't get a fair shake at things in Arizona.
Agreed.
They're a team that, clearly didn't do what the ownership wanted them to do last year. But for them to fire the guy after one season, mostly for what transpired over the last, I think, 6 games of the season for the team, was a mistake. And
listen, you always for when it comes to what a ownership and let's say front office decides to do, confidence has everything to do with it. And if they didn't have confidence with Steve Wilkes, I get it, but they put their confidence in a guy, Cliff Kingsbury, who, his Texas Tech teams have been okay. He's coached Patrick Mahomes, he's coached Baker Mayfield, and obviously he's been nothing but upfront about his love for Kyler Murray. This team is going to pass a lot, Nick. They are going to pass. First of all, they're going to run a ton of plays. They're going to aim for 70 plays a game. And I wouldn't be surprised, Nick, if when we're doing the recap of the season sometime next year, we're talking about Arizona being the number one team when it comes to runs played. Plays run rather.
Right.
So they're going to run a lot of plays. They've got a lot of wide receivers. They made a heavy investment. First of all, I was very surprised that Larry came back this year, Nick. I have to be up front. I love Larry Fitzgerald. He's a legend. He will always be a legend. First ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. Still one of the most iconic plays in Super Bowl history, against Pittsburgh, and it's a shame he never got a ring and probably will never get one, unfortunately for him. But unless this team really exceeds expectation. But yeah, they put in some work when it came to wide receiver. I know that they recently, cut Kevin White, former All-World Bears draft pick. But,
yeah.
Andy Isabella's the guy they're really high on as a slot type guy, inside type receiver. I know that they're big on Demir Byrd and Keyshawn Johnson. Both of those guys are young receivers. And like I said, they're going to run a lot of plays, so Christian Kirk has a chance. People think Christian Kirk is the coming out party for him. So this offense is going to be interesting, Nick. Kyler Murray hasn't had the best start to his career per se, but you never want to judge a guy on preseason, and I will wait to pass judgment on this guy until we start to see some more meaningful ball, because as it is right now, Nick, all teams are doing against this guy is blitzing 6 guys.
Yeah.
Like, they're just going to blitz him all day long, and that is what, that's what we're going to have to see. Is Cliff Kingsbury, let's be honest, Nick, Cliff Kingsbury, first of all, I remember him playing at Texas Tech, so that just goes to show that he doesn't have much skin in the game when it comes to coaching, okay? And then on top of that, he's a guy who, had college success, but it's still up in the air if this is going to translate to a pro ball type of scheme.
Right.
I mean, the scheme they're going to run this year is a risky scheme. The reason why, Nick, that whole Chip Kelly thing didn't work out in Philly has a lot to do with, it's hard to run that type of offense in this league.
Right.
No matter what you say. We see it every week in college football. Teams run really, they do a great job of it. And, personnel-wise, they have more to work with. But NFL teams, it's just hard to do that. It's hard to run a ton of plays. It's hard to run a spread type of offense in this league. And we're going to see if Cliff Kingsbury has the key to that. But I agree. The defense is going to be decent this year. I guess we'll see what their schedule looks like. I still think they'll be last in their division. But I think this team, and I said it earlier in the podcast, I think this team has a chance to be something.
Right.
Now, what is that something? I'm thinking not Bears last year per se as in personnel, but I'm thinking the type of team that they want to be. They want to be a rough and tumble front seven that is going to essentially, be able to take away the ball occasionally. They brought in T. Sizzle, like you said, to complement Chandler Jones, and they've made a lot of effort in the offseason to almost, revamp this defense without going out and getting big names, and they feel like they've done that enough to the point where they're going to be able to stay off the field and basically, hope that your defense can win you some games and hope that your offense won't lose you games. And I think they have a chance to be a 6-win team. We'll see what their schedule looks like, but, that's a really good front seven, Nick. They're going to stop the run at a very nice clip. and I think they're occasionally going to get after the passer, and, it remains to be seen what this offense looks like, but I don't see this team as a bottom dweller. I don't think they're like a 3-win team, a 2-win team, like a lot of people who are judging them right now. I think they're a little bit better than that.
Me too. Looking at their schedule, so they open up at home against Detroit. They're at Baltimore, back-to-back home games against Carolina and Seattle, at Cincinnati, home against Atlanta, at the Giants, at New Orleans. Then they have the Thursday night game against the 49ers. And then they're at Tampa and then at San Francisco before the bye week. Excuse me, week 12. Then three straight home games against the Rams, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland. And then they finish off on the road at Seattle and at the Rams.
Wow. That's a tough schedule, Nick.
Very tough. That's very tough.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say.
Let me go first on this,
go ahead.
Nick, because what I want to do here is I want to go a little bit shorter, and I just want to count how many wins I think they have.
Okay.
I legitimately right now, I can only count 3 wins right now.
Okay.
Because Detroit, to me, opening is going to be an interesting game. We talked about that may be a trap game for Detroit. So they could start their season on a really nice clip. But I think Baltimore's going to be a tough team this year, Nick. They're going to play really good defense. That's going to be a tough game in week 2. Carolina is going to be an improved team, I think, on both sides of the ball, even though, they're not exactly world beaters themselves. But they're not known to be a first-half team the last couple of years. And then, Seattle is going to be a tough team. Cincinnati is 1 win that I will probably give them, but Atlanta, even though I don't see them being a better team overall, I think that offense is way better than the Cardinals' defense. Yeah. I would maybe give them the Giants game, and I would maybe if they're lucky, I will give them the San Francisco game just simply because of playing a division opponent tough. Even though I have a bombshell about the 49ers that we'll reveal next later on, but yeah. Maybe a 3-win team is not so crazy, but I would say again, I'm not going to be surprised if this team wins 6 games and is a candidate for a really huge step up next year.
Agreed. Yeah, dude, I'm with you. I'm looking at maybe 4 or 5 wins for this Arizona team, but at the same time, I'm thinking it's like 5. Tough, not tough, but like Arizona ain't gonna be no bitch. That's what I'm trying to say.
No.
I don't think they're gonna lay down. Yeah, they're not gonna lay down, and they're not going to. Oh my goodness! For some reason, my Vivid Seats app went up when I hit the because this cord is hitting my phone, and it went straight to my Vivid Seats app. Which, by the way. I mean, not for nothing.
You've been putting to use.
Oh,
you've been putting that thing to use.
Oh, in a heartbeat. I put it to use. Found 5 solid seats for the Yankees game in left field, $35.
Wow.
Yeah, dude. And let me say this too. Not only did I find it for $35, but then as soon as I was gonna get ready to check out, I had got this notification saying, we're going to do a quick promotion, 10% off. It was either 10 or 15% off your order. So what was going to be just a tad over $200, under $200.
Nick, I don't want to stray too far off the topic, but while we're on this topic, I really wanted to ask you, because you went to a Mets and a Yankees game, right?
I did.
So tell us a little bit about pricing, because I've been really big on the fact that pricing has a lot to do with baseball, decline as far as attendance is concerned. I know even some of the best teams in the league, including the Yankees, when it comes to attendance, are set to have record low numbers of people coming in.
Right.
So give me a feel of the experience, how packed those games were, and What were the prices fair? Give me an idea of what it was like going to both a Mets and a Yankees game.
Okay, so the beer prices at both places suck. Dude, well, first off, they don't even sell, like, they sell the tall boys, and those things are going off like $14, $15 a pop.
Whoa!
Especially Yankee Stadium, dude. Beer at Yankee Stadium was 13 or 14, and I think at Citi Field it was like either 12 or 13. Yeah, dude, it was ridiculous. And I'm thinking to myself, like, especially with Citi Field, there was a, like, where my boy and I parked, there was a liquor store right across the street. Same Tecate tall boys 24 ounce, $2.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'll spend these $2. I'll spend $4 to $6 on these Tecates the day before I spend $13 for the same tall boy in this field. I would say that the food was a little bit more expensive at Yankee Stadium than it was at Citi Field. But as far as I want to say the atmosphere is concerned, I will shockingly enough say that I felt that there was just a little bit more energy in Citi Field than it was at Yankee Stadium. And the only reason why I can really say that is because the Yankees have been so good, and because the lead of their division is so up, like, people are there, they're watching the game, but you just happen to be watching the game because the Yankees are in town.
Yeah, the Mets are still in the pennant race, so that's why it's exciting for them. I mean, the Yankees have been good for so long. You guys are spoiled by how good they are.
Exactly. So you go into the Mets game, there's a lot of energy there. There's a lot riding on the line. There's a lot, at stake. So they seem a little bit more into the game than maybe the Yankees fans were. But when I went to the Yankees game, they had won. And not only did they win, but I get the privilege of saying that I've seen Aroldis Chapman throw a pitch at 102 miles an hour in person. Because I went to the marathon game that they had against the Yankees, against the Cubs about 2 or so years ago. And and it was so cold, I don't think any of his pitches topped 98. But at Yankee Stadium, his pitches was topping 102. So, yeah, dude, Aroldis throwing that heat in person is something else. But they're both beautiful stadiums. I think Yankee Stadium, the way that it's set up, is more like Wrigley Field. And I think Citi Field, the way that it's set up, is a lot more like Guaranteed Rate Field. If there was any
it's almost
comparison.
like it's like Yankee Stadium is like a museum in a way. You know,
Exactly.
it's just like, you're walking through and, you get to see the plaques and just the statues and everything like that. And it seems like Citi Field is more so like, fun for the kids, lots of activities.
Yeah.
So it's, I thought that was a good parallel. No, I was just interested in that, Nick, because, me and Miro touched on this a little bit last week, but we didn't exactly go into it. But like I said, right now numbers are down for the MLB, and they've got to come up with a plan over the offseason, Nick, to bring people back to the ballpark. I don't care what you do, because, we're looking at a lockout for the NFL possibly next year. And the MLB is, I believe, I don't quote me, I think it's like 2 years away from their negotiation, if I'm remembering correctly. So we may have to look at a lockout before we start to see a resolution to some of these issues, because, man, it's getting expensive to go to ball games. And in a time like this where everything's expensive and, people don't get paid enough, it's a little bit, it's a little bit hard to fathom how they're going to find a way out of that hole. Sorry to take us on a tangent.
Nah, but you know what? Here's the thing too, because I'm on another football podcast called Arch Rivals, and it was brought up.
Yeah, that's a good podcast, man. I was listening to you guys on the way home. I believe it was a couple days ago, but you guys, that's a good one.
And Ricky had brought up the fact that the NFL is talking about cutting out a preseason game and adding on a playoff team.
Those
And
greedy bastards.
right, exactly. But here was my thing. My thing is, okay, as much as I could hate on the fact of bringing in an extra playoff team, because I feel the NFL is the prime example. They're a prime example of a couple things. A, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Okay,
Yeah.
I've been a big fan of that. The NFL, people thrive on the NFL coming back. You know, some people might thrive on the hockey season coming. Some people might thrive on the NBA season coming. A lot of people thrive when opening days here for baseball, but not as many people. I mean, it's not as many people as many as when it's NFL kickoff. The whole world goes crazy. Well, the whole United States goes crazy when it's football. And I'm thinking to myself, bro, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But it's a couple of things. A, the NFL keeps listening to the fans. The fans, no offense to NFL fans that are watching, 88% of NFL fans are idiots. Okay? I'm just going to call a spade a spade. The preseason is not for the fans. It is clearly for the players. So if you're going to cut out a week, because some of these guys, these late minute guys, or these late drafted guys that are trying to take a roster spot, need that fourth week. It's not supposed to be for us. So the NFL needs to stop listening to the fans. Fans need to shut the hell up and stop complaining that there's 4 preseason games, because it's not for you, okay?
Yeah.
So with that being said, I will be okay with them bringing in an extra playoff team, because what that now does is the only way bringing an extra playoff team works means that the only team that gets rewarded for having the best record in each conference is the number 1 team respectively. Because now if you throw in an extra team, you can't throw that second, whoever finished second doesn't get that bye anymore. And I'm all for that. You don't get the second best record in the league, but get the first team benefits. That's BS.
That's crazy.
It's absolutely nuts. Crazy. If I have the best record in the conference, the only team getting a bye should be us. F second place.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's terrible when that happens. And a couple of years ago, I think it was like the Seahawks who made it at 7-9 or something like that.
That needs to be fixed too. That was against the Saints. That was the Marshawn Lynch run. That was the game of the Marshawn Lynch run. Yeah.
That's nuts. That's nuts. And,
the Saints were
I
like.
Say this, Nick.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. No,
I
go ahead.
was gonna say the Saints. I think that year were 11-5, but Carolina that year was like 12-4, 13-3. But here's a below 500 team, and they only got the third place seeding because they won the division. But so if that's one thing that I could give Adam Silver some kind of credit, where he himself been trying to fix that. Like, wait a minute, okay, how am I gonna, just because you won your conference, if I see a team that's won 10 more games than you do, you don't just get home court advantage while this other team's suffering. Hell no. Records need to mean something at some point. At some point, records need to mean something.
Credit to the NBA. They seem to be the leaders in being, like, quote unquote woke to what the issues of the league is, right? Like, they've already started discussing maybe doing a 1-16 format, meaning the top 8 in the divisions, or in the conferences rather, will advance. But once you get to the playoffs, you do a reseeding of 1-16. I like that too. I think that would make it so that the West is, not punished for being in a really nice division. And likewise in football, they have to figure that out. You can't have a team being punished because you have another team in the division that's also very good.
Right.
That's just not good. And listen, to go back to, again, I hate to do tangents like this, but this is what a podcast is, everyone. But when it comes to the MLB's problem, I see it in the same way that I see the NFL's problem, which is the greed of the owners.
Yeah.
And we saw it in the MLB this year, Nick, at free agency, where free agency was like pulling teeth this year. The last 5 or 6 years, you've seen this crazy flow of money and people getting paid, and rightfully, right? We thought, this is what the league is. People are going to get paid, and we see it in the NBA, we see it in the NFL every day now. And this year, that again, the fact that the 2 best free agents basically didn't sign until the end of spring training is almost like telling you that there's a serious issue in this league right now. They've got to figure things out. And Nick, I heard that report about NFL owners proposing that they make the regular season 17 games. What a bunch of greedy bastards.
Yeah.
The NFLPA comes to them saying our players are basically knowingly giving themselves brain damage, knowingly giving themselves a tougher life down the road, and they all are okay with that. They want to play football. They want to do this. But what you're doing to these players is wrong. I look at the Premier League, Nick, and I'm not sure how much of a soccer fan you are, but, I'm starting to get a little bit more into the Premier League and La Liga and some of these other soccer leagues across the world. And, something that I notice about, the Premier League, for example, is a team can have – so there's 11 players on the field. There's 11 players on the field at all times in soccer, and then you're basically getting 5, I think, depending on what league, anywhere from 5 to 8 on the bench, right? So,
right.
We're counting up to 20 players, right?
Right.
A team is allowed to have, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 54 players on their roster. So, you're only going to be able to have essentially, 20 players on your active roster, but you can have triple that in your possession. And the NFL needs to get in line, because the NFL is different, right? You've got 22 players on both sides of the ball, but you've got subs that need to come in when we're talking about defense, when we're talking about wide receivers, when we talk about running backs. So you're going to have, guys that are going to play. The NFL guys play, backup running backs play, third string running backs play. 1 through 4 of the wide receiver depth chart played. We see teams keeping 4 or 5 tight ends, but yet you only have 53 men on your roster.
Right.
I mean, what a crazy thing to just use that arbitrary number, 53, no more, no less. It's like, listen, you keep 90 players in the preseason.
Right.
And now you're telling us, it's not like these teams can't afford it, Nick. We know these teams can afford to keep 90 players on their roster, because the bottom half of that roster is not going to make a lot of money either way.
Right.
So to say, well, we can't do more than 53 because, it's gonna make the payroll burden too much, and yada yada yada, and all the excuses they like to give is crazy. This whole, we see tons, Nick. How many undrafted free agents every year come out and somehow are one of the players in the league? And you're like, how did this guy go undrafted? And the real reason is not because this guy wasn't as good or yada yada. It's because there's not a lot of slots, man.
Right.
You've got hundreds of players entering the league every single year, and not enough players retiring every year. So it's just this insane cycle where the NBA, I get it, right? You've got 5 players on the court at all times, and really you never use more than 10 in a night, right?
Right.
So, you're not going to ask for that there, and that's a difficult, more complex situation for them. I still think they need an MLB type system in the basketball league, where you can have, again, a developmental league, but you basically call them up like they're one of your pitchers in the MLB, and you need to have that type of system for the NBA, so more of these guys can get drafted and more guys can have opportunities. But it's a major thing in every sport right now, Nick, and these sports are going to have to figure it out, because it's no longer about the money going into billionaire pockets anymore. We need to, as fans, take back these sports and let these guys know that this isn't about you making a couple 100,000 extra going straight to your pocket, or a couple million for your organization, a couple billion probably for some of these guys, So we need to take this sport back when it comes to, what we want as fans.
No, I'm with you on that. I never understood the whole cutting thing. Yeah, 90 to 53, that's 27 players. 37 players that you're gonna tell that they're not gonna have a job. And a lot of this stuff, especially you're hearing a lot of rumblings where the NFLPA has told the players to start saving your money because that they have prepared to go on a lockout. The prime example is look at Ezekiel Elliott. Here's a guy that has more or less kind of been the offense of the Dallas Cowboys and decided he wanted more money 2 years out. And Jerry Jones is playing him like a fool. And I think I kind of see both sides, because I think with Zeke's kind of holding that leverage saying, hey, man, look, I'm basically your squad, so you can try and find a replacement if you want to, but I want more bread. And the Dallas Cowboys is looking like Vince Vaughn in that movie. What's the one with him and Travolta? What's the one with him and John Travolta? It's gonna drive me crazy. It's
John Travolta?
Yeah, when it was a spinoff to oh my God, it's gonna drive me nuts. It had Uma Thurman, it had Andre 3000, it had
Domestic Disturbance.
No, that's not the name of it. It's Get Something. Not Get Shorty was the original, but then there's
Are you talking about because the one he had with Travolta I think was called Domestic Disturbance, but
anyway, the
ahead,
character of Vince Vaughn was going like he kept telling old girl that she had 3 years left on her contract and she needs to honor the contract. And that's what Jerry Jones is pretty much telling Zeke. Like, man, you got 2 more years left on your contract. You need to come out here and run the ball. So I kind of see where Jerry's coming from. I kind of see where Zeke's coming from. But I think it's going to be what is more or less going to really kind of kick this whole oh my goodness, I'm losing my train of thought. That's how you know I'm not feeling well. I lose my train of thought. Oh, this was going to cause this whole lockout. Because, everyone's wanting to get paid, and the owners are saying, we'll pay you once you honor your contract. But then NFL players know that they can kick you off to the curb any way you want. See Le'Veon Bell. So, I don't know. It's an entire mess, but I'm with you. I think a lot of this has to do with the greed of the owners not playing the players. It's the never-ending domino effect. The owners would never get paid unless the play, because it's not like the fans are going to go see Robert Kraft of the New England Patriots. Anybody pays tickets to say, oh, let me go see Robert Kraft, see how he's. No one gives a rat's ass about Robert Kraft and what he's doing up top. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be I'm with you. It's going to be a very sticky situation, especially with the greed that's going on with the players. So we'll get back. Let's get back to the training camps real quick because we're almost done.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So I think we ended off Cardinals, and I'm assuming you probably want to go into the 49ers next.
That is where I'm going to go next, because I'm on the fence with high. It's not that I'm on the fence about San Francisco. I think the 49ers' success all will get fixed in on how healthy they're going to be. You know what I'm saying? Because I think with San Francisco, Jimmy Garoppolo, when Jimmy came in and filled in for San Francisco, he went 5-1. Everyone thought he was going to take the next step, but then the man got hurt.
Yeah.
My beef is that, I'm right now looking at their offense right now. It's average at best.
They're deep.
You think so? I mean, I'm looking at. All
I
right.
think so. So let me give my pitch first, Nick, because here's why. I'm really high on the 49ers this year, and I'm going to give you the reasoning why, okay?
All right.
This team was really improved last year. I think we both know they had a great offseason. A lot of people were expecting big things out of this team. You know, not necessarily Super Bowl or playoff, but they were expecting this team to take a major step up. Kyle Shanahan, you know, is finally feels like he's got his personnel. And they had 20 major injuries in the first 3 weeks. Includes Garoppolo going out, includes Jerick McKinnon, you know, early in training camp. You know, they missed like 3 or 4 of their best defensive guys last year. And, you know, they really had nothing to show for it. And they still clawed last year, dude. They, you know, made games interesting. And I thought it had a lot to do with that coaching staff and how well prepared that team was. And they won a couple of games that they weren't supposed to win late in the season. And I'm going to tell you why I think this team is deep on the offensive side of the ball. They went out and drafted receivers this year. They drafted Dante Pettis last year. They're expecting him to take a step up. Marquise Goodwin is obviously one of the fastest players in the league, and you know, expected to be a big guy for them. Trent Taylor was a big, you know, slot guy for them last year, and Deebo Samuel. You know, a lot of people thought this guy is a top 3 receiver coming out this draft. So, you know, wide receiver, you know, position, I think it's safe to say they are, you know, pretty solid. They're more deep than good. They're deep. They've got a lot of solid players, but they don't have that one guy, and I think that's always been the thing with them. But they don't need one guy in this offense. They just need to be able to have a lot of guys who can do it. And I think with George Kittle, you know, breaking out last year, he's going to be a candidate for, a type of Travis Kelce type season this year if Jimmy can stay healthy. And basically everything I'm saying is hinging on those words, if Jimmy can stay healthy. Because we've already seen what the team can do with Nick Mullins last year. I thought Kyle Shanahan made Nick Mullins look like an NFL quarterback, and this guy's not an NFL quarterback. So,
right.
So that's the huge issue is like, okay, CJ Beathard, you know, he had a couple nice games. He's not a guy that I think should be considered to be a lock as even a roster spot with the way that they go through quarterbacks. So, yeah, I think there's still some question marks with the team, but the way I really see the biggest thing is this defense is going to be really good. They've got a really solid front seven. They drafted Nick Bosa this year. I'm sorry, not Nick Bosa, his little brother.
No, you're right. You're right.
Is it Nick Bosa? Yeah. It's
Joey
Bosa,
is the older one.
Yeah,
yep.
Sorry. So Nick Bosa, I know he's hurt, and you know, not a lot of people like his character, but I don't really care about it. You know, people want to mention that he's a Trump supporter or that he did. You know, I don't care about that.
Who cares?
Let's just play football. Let's just play football, man. And you know, if we're gonna do that, we're going down a slippery slope if you want to start to ask, you know, players about their personal opinions. So
right.
Let's cut that bullshit out. But yeah. DeForest Buckner, former first-round pick. Eric Armstead, former first-round pick. Nick Bosa, current first-round pick. Solomon Thomas, former first-round pick. So they seem to be really rolling on the front. Exactly. And then on top of that, you know, I know that you're probably familiar with him, but you know, he had a season-ending injury last year. But I was really impressed that they, you know, convinced Quan Alexander to come out there.
Yeah.
You know, so. They got D Ford, people forget. So they got D Ford now in the mix with all of those guys that we just talked about up front. And Fred Warner came out and played really solid football last year. You know, their secondary needs work, but they also went out in the offseason and got themselves a number 1 type corner in Jason Brett. And they also have Richard Sherman. So hard to argue with the defense right now. And if the offense can do what the head coach's strength is, right, Nick? If your head coach's strength is to put together a solid offense and you know you have a good defense, this team is going to fly under the radar this year. But you're 100% right. How can we make a judgment here if this team hasn't proven they can stay healthy? And more specifically, their quarterback hasn't proven that.
Right.
So we'll have to see what that looks like. But you know, I think I'll shock you with what my prediction is on this team, but I think they're going to be a pretty darn good team this year.
So let's look at their schedule. they're already going to be 0-1 because they open up in Tampa. And then they open up. Oh no, I'm sorry. So they're at Tampa to open up. Then they're at Cincinnati, and then they're at home against Pittsburgh for the bye week. Then they have a Monday night game against Cleveland, at the Rams, at Washington, home against Carolina, at Arizona, and then a Monday night game against Seattle, home against Arizona, home against Green Bay, back-to-back away games with Baltimore and New Orleans, home against Atlanta, home against the Rams, and they finish off in Seattle.
Oh man, it's a pretty tough schedule.
It's very tough. But
Yeah,
when
so how
healthy,
about
though, that's the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. No. So, okay. Here's my thought process with this team. They played better later in the season last year. They beat Seattle, who, ended up making the playoffs and, I believe was a pretty good team last year. So, I think they're going to play the Rams. And part of the reason why I think they're going to be good is, and we'll talk about later, is I think the Rams are going to take a bit of a step down.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to see the Rams in the same light that we saw the Eagles last year, where
Right.
the team is still going to make the playoffs, but man, oh man, they might have some issues. I think. Listen, it doesn't take a rocket scientist for me to. It doesn't take me being a rocket scientist for me to tell you that you want to play your division really tough, but I see games against Cincinnati, Washington, Arizona, again twice in Arizona, and then the Falcons, who again I don't think are going to be that great this year. So I see this team right now bordering on a team that can go. Listen, I don't necessarily see this team being a 4-win team,
No.
but yeah, if they have the type of season and luck last year with injuries that they did last year, it's going to be really tough for them. But I see this team right now being a candidate for one of those things we talked about for previous teams. I think a couple of them in the AFC South we talked about. I think their window is very big, meaning I think they can go 6-10. But it's crazy because I can always see them going 10-6.
Yeah.
Because their offense. We don't know what the defense is going to look like. We know it's going to be stacked, but their offense is going to be their strength, right? And if you know your offense is your strength as a head coach, you have a chance against this division because Arizona's defense is pretty good, but they're going to try and outscore you. Seattle is, right now in a transitionary phase, and we're going to have to see where they move on to next year, or this year rather, when it comes to philosophy. And the Rams, I think, are going to have to be more of a balanced team this year. They don't want to have to, play those games that we saw against the Chiefs last year, where it was like, throwing the ball 60 times and this and this and that. I think they want to switch things up and hopefully make their defense a little bit better. I see this team right now probably at a 8-8, 9-7 type of clip that again could get into the bottom half if they have tough luck, and to the top half if they have good luck.
Yeah, if the 49ers didn't have to play Tampa, they'd be a 10-6 team. But because I'm biased and I'm going to be a natural born hater, they will go 9-7. That's the hell right. So if they were playing like Detroit, easily 10-6. Because you're playing Tampa, you're only a 9-7 team. And hell, that's a whole lot better than what you were last year. So take it for what it is. That's what
true.
I'm saying. Now, here's a team that I'm a little I'm on the fence about because I don't know how I feel about them. But it's the Seattle Seahawks. Now, I'm looking at them on paper. And, I mean, obviously, we know about Russell Wilson, how good he is. Chris Carson, David Moore, Tyler Lockett. They drafted DK Metcalf, the big guy out of Ole Miss. Looking at their offensive line.
Got hurt already, by the way.
Yeah, by the way. Dwayne Brown, Mike Iupati, Justin Britt, DJ Fluker, and Jermaine Ifedi. And then looking at their defense, they got Ziggy Ansah, Jerron Reed is suspended, KJ Wright, Bobby Wagner, who got one of the 99s on Madden, Shaquille Griffin, Trey Flowers. Bradley McDougal's on the team, Michael Kendricks. My problem with Seattle is this. There's a lot of people that probably think that Seattle might be the second best team in the West. I don't think I feel that way. I feel like the big O word is about to be surrounded by Seattle. And that O word I'm throwing is overrated. Because looking at this team based on what I just said, none of the players woo me. That's Russell Wilson included. Like, I'm not saying that I don't appreciate what Russell Wilson does. I'm just not putting it on the same level as a lot of other people do. Like, people are talking about, well, Russell Wilson is one of my top 5 quarterbacks. I'm not the one to put him up there that high. Maybe top 10. I'm not putting him in my top 5. You feel what I'm saying? And it's just like like every time I watch Seattle, they bore me to death. They're just not exciting. Yeah, they've got the results, but they're just boring and not exciting. And I think this is the year where I feel like the boring and the exciting will turn more L's than W's.
Yeah, that's honestly, Nick, that's part of the reason why I think so highly for some reason of San Francisco is because, Seattle and LA right now don't scare me. As an NFC cohort, and you are too, I don't look at them and think, because these were, two of the tougher teams in the NFC last year, Nick.
Right.
Part of the reason why Seattle, didn't win the division is because of how good the Rams were, right? So, the big thing for me right now is, I don't necessarily see the appeal in Seattle anymore because right now this defense is not even close to what we saw even 2 years ago from the Seattle team. So I have to think of it in a way as sort of a step back type of season, but you have to remember, Nick, that Russell Wilson, he got extended over the off season.
Right.
They made a really serious commitment to this dude, and it's basically going to be one of those things where they're going to have to ride it out with Russell, and they're going to go where he goes. And let's be honest, he had a really, really big part in them even sniffing the playoffs last year. Because he overachieved pretty well. Because one thing that's been consistent about Seattle, no matter what, is their offensive line is garbage.
Yeah,
it's like uncanny that every single year, without fail, Pete Carroll has managed to put together an even more pitiful front 5 for them than he did the year before. Jermaine Ifedi isn't doing anything for me as your bookend and as a guy who, they see as like a team leader and, as a guy that's going to lead this offense, and I'll transition to his Madden rating to prove it. But I also want to go on a little bit of a Madden tangent. What's up with Madden on the whole, like, we can't have more than 499 players this year?
right.
It's like, yo, there was like 5 or 6 players that you looked up and said, why isn't that dude 99? I know, listen, like, it's okay if you did it for, like, bona fide players. Well, Bobby Wagner, Nick, I was paying attention to Bobby Wagner only because I had him in the fantasy league, in the IDP fantasy league.
Right.
And he didn't have that great of a season last year.
Right.
He took sort of a step down. And part of that was to do to injury, but another part of that is because he doesn't have the same health that he used to. And now with no Earl Thomas, which, again, he was missing early in the season last year, so we know what this team is without him right now. But to a certain extent, man, it's crazy to think about that Seattle just a couple of years ago, Nick, was one Marshawn Lynch run away from yet another Super Bowl,
right,
and possibly changing the fate of the Patriots in the whole league. And now you look at this team and you're like, yeah, they're not all that.
No, they're not at all. And I sit here and I'm looking at their schedule real quick. I'll bust it out. So they open up at home against Cincinnati, and then they're at Pittsburgh, and then a home game against New Orleans, at Arizona, home against the Rams, at Cleveland, home against Baltimore, at Atlanta, home against Tampa, and then the Monday night game at San Francisco before they get the bye week, week 11. And then they're at Philly, a Monday night game at home against Minnesota, back-to-back road games against the Rams and Carolina, and then they finish off home games with Arizona and San Francisco. Yeah, dude, first things first. The funny thing about Bobby Wagner getting that 99 is it's like when it came out and everyone was asking like, oh, hey, by the way, Bobby Wagner is one of the four because you got Aaron Donald, bam, okay. You got Khalil Mack, okay, I can see that. You're going to give it to an offensive guy, maybe DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, I guess, okay. But you would have never
if
guessed.
Hopkins gets that, then Michael Thomas gets that too. Let's just say that.
If DeAndre Hopkins gets that, Mike Evans needs to get a 99.
Yeah.
If we're going to play that game, shoot.
There's 3 or 4 other names because, DeAndre is really good, and he makes some spectacular plays too, but production-wise, there's not a huge difference between Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, Michael Thomas, even OBJ to a certain extent. It's like, I get it. OBJ's out of 99 this year. I'll agree with that, but to have only 4 99s and say this is some exclusive club, and one of them is Bobby Wagner, a guy who had an okay season last year.
Right.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I thought it was weird too. And then my boy Phil is saying that Saquon, I guess, is a 91 in Madden this year. I mean,
I kind of get that too because, second-year guy, he'll probably be a 99 next year. But we've seen it before, Nick, where Madden is hesitant on position offensive position players. You have to put in some work. You have to put in some work to be in the high 90s. We saw it with the quarterback this year. There's not a ton of quarterbacks who are in this crazy tier. I mean, we had that whole debate with Jameis Winston and Trubisky and some of the other guys. But guys, they're not handing out 85 anymore to quarterbacks.
Nope.
You're going to have to earn it. And same thing when it comes to running back. I think Kamara, they were low on last year too, and then it went up during the season. So you'll probably see Saquon up there soon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But based on this schedule and based on the fact that it's Seattle and I'm just not wooed on Seattle, I mean, I'm going to go 8-8, bro. I honestly think that I think San Francisco might actually have a better record than Seattle. I'm just not impressed. I'm just not wooed on the Seattle Seahawks. I haven't been wooed by the Seattle Seahawks in a while. And, I also wanted to look at their running back depth because, you go out and you draft Rashad Penny a couple years ago. Yeah, Chris Carson still stays number one. The all-time leading rusher in college football history, and it's Chris Carson that's out there getting all the carries. And, I mean, he's okay, but it's just like, dude, I'm just not wooed by this team whatsoever. So, yeah dude, I'm thinking 8-8 for Seattle.
Nick, for some reason, Pete Carroll and that front office, they think they're like position player whisperers. They think because Doug Baldwin came over there and took a step up that they can take any running back and any wide receiver and they'll make them good. And look at some of the tight ends that they've trotted out there the last couple of years. They haven't, since Jimmy Graham left, they haven't exactly really killed it at tight end. So running back to me is questionable. I thought the Rashad Penny thing was questionable, even back then. And then last year, Carson gets hurt, and Penny's just okay. I understand he was hurt a lot too. But, then DK Metcalf this year, right? Listen, DK Metcalf is a freak of nature. His dad's a former Bears offensive lineman, and he's a wide receiver. So that just shows you what type of physical freak he is. I think he ended up having one of the best 40 times. Was it 4? Yeah. He had one of the best 40 times ever for a guy his size, and one of the best ever for a wide receiver. And then you go and you dig a little bit deeper into his 3-cone drill, and it's literally like an offensive lineman. No joke. This guy is one of the slowest players that's ever been recorded as a 3-cone athlete. So that just goes to show you that this team feels like they have a chip on their shoulder with everything they do. Same thing with Russell Wilson, right, Nick? The story for Russell Wilson was he's too short. He should have played baseball. He's never going to be a quarterback. Da-da-da-da-da. And, he turned out to be a pretty darn good quarterback. And they just rolled with it from there. They just feel like they can take these, these players who, have serious, deficiencies in one area but are well-rounded otherwise.
Right.
And it hasn't really worked for them, to say that it's going to work this year. So I'm in the same boat. Just as I said when I was recapping 49ers, I think the 49ers are fighting for a second or first place. I think they're more so fighting for first place with the Rams because Seattle, I see them as a 7-9 team this year. I see them as solid 7-9. I think they'll be under 500 this year.
Yep. And then that leads us to the final of this training camp segment, which is the Los Angeles Rams. Obviously, the Rams are coming off a season where they represented the NFC in the Super Bowl. Actually didn't play all that bad defensively. Actually, they were really good. Yeah. Offensively, they were trash. And a lot of it may have been to the fact that maybe Todd Gurley was nursing a knee injury, and they really couldn't get the run game going. Jared Goff was just making just horrible passes that weren't even close to the receivers at times last year. But they pretty much come back with the same squad. I mentioned the aforementioned Todd Gurley and Jared Goff. At wide receiver, Cooks, Woods, and Cooper Kupp. Tyler Higbee at tight end. Andrew Whitworth, Joseph Noteboom, Brian Allen, Austin Blythe, and Rob Havenstein as the offensive line. Defensively is pretty much the same. No Ndamukong Suh. He's in Tampa now. But they still have Aaron Donalds. They bring in Clay Matthews to run the life outside linebacker. Dante Fowler Jr. is on there. Eric Weddle's on the team. You still got Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib. So pretty much the same squad as last year. But I think a lot of eyes are going to be on Todd Gurley and that knee, because remember, they were saying at one point in the offseason that his knee was so bad that he almost was forced to retire from football. So I'm almost thinking, I wonder if teams are really now going to zero in 100% on Todd Gurley, because the Rams are one Todd Gurley injury away from being what could be a repeat return to the Super Bowl, to being in the same category as we put Seattle in that 8-8, 7-9 category.
Yeah, Nick, help me out. Who's the backup running back rather that they drafted this year? I don't want to butcher his name. I think it's Henderson or.
It is, Darrell Henderson. But then you got so Malcolm Brown is your backup to Todd Gurley.
Backup, yeah.
Yeah, and then they have Darrell Henderson as the third string.
So, listen, this Henderson kid is good. Apparently, they see him in a role essentially as a guy that will take on a lot of duties even if Gurley is healthy. So I think they're going to probably split carries for Gurley and maybe save him for later on in the season, which, listen, if you're in that mindset before you play game one, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say. If you're a star running back, if you're thinking we need to save this guy for the playoffs, you've got the wrong mentality, my friend. And
right.
You mentioned it, dude. That offense looked pitiful at some points in the Super Bowl. That defense was the only reason why they were in that game, and some of that had to do with the ineptitude of the offense of the Patriots at some point.
Right.
But you have to read between the lines sometimes, Nick. When Bill Belichick comes out after the Super Bowl and basically says that Detroit basically gave them the game plan on how to stop the Rams, and they watched that Detroit game where the Rams really didn't look good. And people were wondering, man, they only really had one or two games where that offense was completely bad. Even in games that they lost last year, that offense looked good. They were just in shootout.
Right.
And when Belichick said to you, by the way, the Detroit gave us the formula for beating you guys 7 weeks before we did, that's troubling to me. That means we're predictable, right? So when it comes down to it, I've said this about McVay before. I thought last year that team, they lost Cooper Kupp. They lost Brandon Cooks at some point. I'm a fan of Robert Woods. I even like the kid Reynolds that they have, who stepped in late in the season. They're a pretty good offensive line. I'm not really a huge fan of this defense, honestly, Nick. I like the fact that they went out and tried to address the defense, but when your two main additions to the defense were players that basically you're talking about Eric Weddle and Clay Matthews, those guys whose former teams basically chucked up the deuces to them and said, "Now we're good. Have fun.
Right.
Have a good rest of your career." And let's not forget, it's not like those two teams didn't need those positions. The Baltimore cut Weddle, and then they signed Earl Thomas because they knew, shit, we need another guy in here. And same thing with Clay Matthews. They let go of Clay Matthews, and they signed Zadarius Smith to play his position, and gave him big money. So both those teams said, "Now we're good" for both those players, and both those players are now your premier pickups of the offseason. That to me is a little bit shady. I like the kid Henderson, but I think if they don't have Gurley, they're a really one-dimensional offense. And when you're talking about a defense that has older players now, Donald, listen, I love Aaron Donald, and don't get me wrong, he's a freak, but you'd be lying if you said that Ndamukong Suh being right next to him didn't have a lot to do with what he does, right? That doesn't take anything away from him as a player. He's by far the best interior lineman in the league, and I think probably by the time it's all said and done has a case for all time. But we're going to see this year the type of value that Suh added to Donald, because let's not forget, Donald got drafted and everyone knew he was good. But we didn't start to see Aaron Donald become Aaron Donald until the last 3 seasons, and let's not forget those last 3 seasons all involved Ndamukong Suh. So we have to take that into consideration. We have to take in consideration that they're going to have some older players. I don't necessarily see the team as a huge threat to the Bears or even in the NFL period. But I think right now they're probably being a little bit more overrated than they are underrated.
My buddy Phil just let me know that Miami came to play against Florida. They are actually beating the Gators 13-7 with 13:09 left in the third.
Don't they have a true freshman quarterback, Nick?
Who is that?
Not Jake Martell.
In Miami?
I'm not sure. I'll check it out once I get, because I'm pulling up into my house right now. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I think Miami ended up switching quarterbacks. I forget who's starting for them, but he wasn't slated to be the starter. You know what my thoughts are? Screw both of them. Fear the spear, my friend. Miami and Florida could both disappear from the face of the earth, and I wouldn't shed one tear for any one of these two idiots. Freaking Miami versus Florida. Give me a break. You want to talk real college football? let's talk about how Willie Randolph. Or let me say something else too. By the way, the best thing that could have, and I think I mentioned this before, but the best thing that could have ever happened to Florida State was when DeAndre Francois decided that when they dismissed him from the team, and then they brought in, and then James Blackman came out because Francois was hurt last year, and in a lot of those, and in the way that our head coach likes to run plays because he runs the West Coast offense is. I just called him Willie Randolph. I'm thinking of the Yankees. Willie Taggart is our head coach.
Yeah.
And he loves running that West Coast offense. And the thing is, when you run the West Coast offense and you're running like the option plays, the quarterback has to keep it at some point. DeAndre Francois was never really healthy from that knee injury, and he never kept the football. And I'm thinking like, dude, you have to bring in James Blackman at some point because DeAndre Francois, his passes were never accurate. He had the strongest arm in the world, couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat, couldn't run. He couldn't do jack shit for Florida State last year and was one of the many reasons why they were so bad. So when James Blackman was like, well, if I'm not going to start, I'm going to transfer portal. And then they were like, oh, hell no, we can't afford to lose him. You cut DeAndre Francois, you start James Blackman, you get Cam Akers to finally learn the West Coast playbook. Florida State's going to be so good this year. I'm not saying they're going to be Clemson good, but they're not going to be 5-7 and struggling against teams like they were last year. That's BS. DeAndre Francois should be ashamed of himself and should have went to the coach and had some balls and been like, look, put in James because I'm not healthy. Not be a selfish dick and stay on to the field. That's nonsense. And Willie Taggart we trust because Willie has really been bringing in some dudes this year, and they're going to be good. I'm telling you, the Florida State's in good hands. They're in good hands.
Yeah, no, and the the ACC is going to be interesting this year too.
Very interesting.
It's it's hard to watch the draft and not notice how many players the ACC is producing for the NFL right now.
Yep.
It's continuously making a case for itself as the second best. I think everyone can agree the SEC is, as far as talent is concerned, they for some reason tend to bring out, get the best recruiting talent of anybody. But, after that, you'd have to start looking at the ACC as, one of the best and most competitive divisions in all the country.
Phil says 8-4. Hey, 8-4 is better than what they did last year at 5-7. Shoot, like I said, I'm not expecting Florida State to win the ACC this year. But I do think that in due time, they will challenge Clemson to be the kings of the ACC once again. Real quick to finish up the Rams. I want to go into their schedule. They open up at Carolina, home against New Orleans, at Cleveland, home against Tampa, a Thursday night at Seattle, home against San Fran, at Atlanta, home against Cincinnati. They have the bye week 9. And then at Pittsburgh, back-to-back home games against the Bears, and then Monday night against Baltimore, at Arizona, home against Seattle, at Dallas, at San Francisco, and they finish off against hold on a second, Phil, because Phil just laughed at you. Phil just laughed at you saying that ACC second best because Phil is a big-time Big Ten homer. And can I know, and can I go, dude, at what point do we start putting Michigan in that overrated category? How many more years do we have to keep thinking, oh, Jim Harbaugh is the greatest thing to happen to Michigan, and Michigan, this is going to be their year, and blah, 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 and all this other nonsense for them to lose some game they shouldn't have lost to, like Iowa, and they get smoked by Ohio State. Like, come on, man.
And you know what's even sadder, Nick? You know what's even sadder? How is it that
Ohio State implodes and you still don't take advantage of it. Like you're supposed to be one of the best teams in the league coming into this year. When it comes to the Wolverines, they were, last year coming in, people had higher expectations for them. And Ohio State, again, the whole Urban Meyer thing happened, and they, definitely didn't have the type of season that they envisioned last year, even though it didn't work out too badly for them. But you're looking at your arch rival who always has a hand in you being so bad every year, basically have an off year and you can't take advantage of it. That's just bad. So yeah,
we'll see about that whole Harbaugh experiment up in Ann Arbor, because I'm not exactly sold on that quite yet either.
Yeah. Phil wants to correct me. He said he's not a Big Ten homer. I get his favorite team's Penn State, so I guess he's just a fan of the Big Ten. ACC still second best.
The Big Ten has competitive football. Trust me. I follow the Northwestern Wildcats. They've got competitive football. But what we're talking about here, Nick, is the best players, the best coaches, the best teams always historically come from, these very select few teams, and most of these teams come out of either the ACC or the SEC. That's basically what we're working with, especially when it comes to the draft. Again, if you watch the NFL draft this year, it's hard not to notice how many players came from the SEC and the ACC, and even to a certain extent, the Big Ten has produced some, but at the next level, it's definitely about the SEC and the ACC.
Phil says, no, I hate the rest of the Big Ten. Okay.
Good to know. So he's a Penn State fan, then.
Yeah, it's just Penn State, I guess. He's not like everybody else. All right, so, but based on the Rams schedule, I guess if healthy, 11-5, 12-4. But I think if Todd Gurley goes down, I honestly think that I think they're in the same boat as Seattle. I really do. I think Todd Gurley is the end all be all. And if they stay healthy, I think the Rams could be as good this year as they were last year. But I think they're one or two, especially one being Todd Gurley injury away from being a average Seattle team, which then would boost, as far as our picks are concerned, would boost San Francisco into winning the West.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why I'm so gung-ho about the 49ers, is because, I've been plotted about this whole Rams collapse, and I think it's happening this year. I think, they have a chance to obviously win the division. They're going to be the favorites, I believe. But they've got a tough schedule, Nick. You got to play New Orleans in week 2 after, an opener versus Carolina. We all know how openers happen, or, anything can happen. So you're playing on the road in your first game, against New Orleans at home, your second game, at the dog pound against Cleveland, which a lot of people expect that team to be really good this year, and that's going to be in prime time, against the Bucks in week 4, Seattle in week 5, another division game with San Francisco, and then later in the season you got to play the Bears defense, the Pittsburgh defense, the Baltimore defense, the Seattle defense, the Arizona defense, the Dallas defense, San Francisco we talked about. So this is going to be a really, really tough sledding for them. This might be a season where, honestly, 9-7 or 10-6 probably wins them the division. I don't think this is going to be a one of those where San Francisco has 12 wins and wins the division. But right. I very much see San Francisco in a very good position to pass, the Rams and Seattle. But I still see, the Rams in the driver's seat. Let's see what they do in the first couple of weeks. They're probably, talent-wise, 9-7 is probably too low for them, but I think 9-7, 10-6 is probably what I'm going to go with.
All righty. Well, that finishes out the NFC West. Next week, we'll finish out the South, and the training camp segment will be over with. And by the time we see you in 2 weeks,
actual football to talk about.
We'll have actual football to talk about. We'll have picks. We'll have the whole shebang. Well, I'm not gonna lie. As much as I would love to stay in chat, I need to take my old dumbass to bed because this cold is forever kicking my ass. I should be fine by next week. These colds for me don't really last that long. So
You brought the New York cold with you. I think that's what it is. Those germs in New York, you're not ready for them quite yet. You haven't adjusted, and they're kicking in now.
you know what it is? It's the fact that it was so damn hot, and my black ass was in the heat, in the AC, back in the heat,
Right.
back in the AC, and
Yeah,
I wasn't
yeah,
and
that's
I
never good.
wasn't staying hydrated enough, and then I wasn't drinking orange juice like I should have been, and man, my body caught it. So yeah, and subscribe to Mac and Black on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes. And make sure you check out our website at macandblack.com. So fun show. We'll talk some more next week. But for Mac and I'm Black, we will see you guys next week.